Biming frowned slightly. He waved his ice blade and cut the piece of cloth that was dirted by Yun Chujio. Then he said indifferently, "Do you think I want to kill you? I won't kill you." Yun Chujio was stunned for a moment. Then she finally reacted. Damn it, she had scared herself to such an extent. It was so embarrassing. Biming felt that this little girl was really unreasonable. It was better to leave as soon as possible. Hence, he did not care about Yun Chujio's reaction. He lifted his leg and was about to leave. "Hey, are you not going to kill me no matter what I do?" Yun Chujio reached out to block the door and asked. Biming nodded without any hesitation. "That's right. I won't kill you no matter what you do. Even if you want to kill me, I won't kill you." Yun Chujio's heartbroken heart was immediately comforted. Damn it, this gigolo still had a conscience. However, since he wouldn't kill her, what was there to be afraid of? Who cared if he had 7 emotions and 6 desires or not? Even if it was an ice sculpture, she still wanted to make him hot, passionate and fiery. Biming looked at the little girl with tears on her face, but there was a hint of craftiness in his eyes. He felt that his heart seemed to be beating a little faster. Biming frowned. He must be angry because his clothes were dirty. He calmed down a little and immediately returned to his calm state of mind. "Now that you are done with your questions, move aside. I will go and get rid of the Jingmu Kingdom's army," Biming said coldly. "My dear, how do you want to get rid of them? Although you are pretty awesome, there are tens of thousands of them." Yun Chujio asked with a smile. Biming frowned again when he heard Yun Chujio call him my dear. But he still answered, "I will go and kill Emperor Muxian. Then they will naturally retreat without a fight." Yun Chujio showed a look of admiration. "My Prince Charming, you are really wise and wise. You actually thought of such a good idea. My admiration for you is like a torrential river. Are you done? Next time when you talk, just pick something useful and say it. Don't talk about this nonsense." "It's a waste of time," Biming said coldly. Yun Chujio. Fuck? How could she take down this kind of person who refused to listen to both hard and soft tactics? This guy rolled his eyes and sighed. "All right, you can go then. You can do whatever you need to do. I'm fine." Biming nodded slightly. "It's good that you're like this. Don't be unreasonable in the future." Yun Chujio nodded obediently. "My Prince Charming, what you said makes sense. I'll listen to you from now on." Biming nodded lightly and walked out of the house. Just as he was about to leave, he heard a loud bang from inside the house. He frowned and thought for a moment before he turned around and returned to the house. He saw Yun Chujio curled up on the ground. Her forehead was covered in bean-sized beads of sweat as she bit her lips. Biming felt as though his entire heart was throbbing. He quickly picked up Yun Chujio, who was on the ground, and asked, "What's wrong?" "No, nothing. You can go. Don't worry about me," Yun Chujio said weakly. Her voice was so weak that it sounded like she was going to die at any moment. Biming reached out and pressed on Yun Chujio's pulse. The pulse was extremely chaotic. He frowned and searched through his memories. He said coldly, "Is it because of that Guai Chao?" The Guai Chao in his dantian was about to collapse. Oh God! Oh God! It was a good grass. This matter had nothing to do with it. Yun Chujio said with difficulty, "It's not Guai Chao, it's my heart that hurts so much. My heart might be broken. You don't need to care about me. You can go and do your work." Heartache? Could it be a heart disease? Could it be a heart disease? You didn't have such a problem in the past. Biming put Yun Chujio on the bed and said with puzzlement. Yun Chujio hummed and said, "Maybe it was just the incubation period in the past, but now it's acting up. I'm feeling a little emotional today, so I'm having a mental illness. I'm really fine. You should go. It's good that I'm dead, so I won't drag you down." Biming felt a wave of anger spread from the bottom of his heart. This was a very strange emotion, and it was even angrier than before. He said coldly, "Don't say die again. This venerable self doesn't allow you to die." A few crocodile tears flowed out of the corner of Yun Chujio's eyes. She said weakly, "I don't want to die either, but my heart hurts, it hurts." Biming quickly held her in his arms. He checked her pulse and asked questions, and even beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Hei Shinjo wanted to laugh, but she was afraid that her plan would be ruined. She could only continue to groan. I don't know why, but I seem to be better. Di Biming thought to himself. Maybe it was because of his special constitution that he hugged her, which made her feel better. Thinking of this, he pulled Yun Chuzhou into his arms and asked, "How do you feel now?" Yun Chuzhou hummed, "I seem to be better than before, it's really strange." Hearing this, Di Biming felt that his guess was right, so he hugged Yun Chuzhou tightly. A certain Zhou was very proud of herself. "Aren't you a germaphobe? Don't you dislike physical contact with people? Why are you hugging her now? What bullshit doesn't have 7 emotions and 6 desires?" Even if it was really sealed, she would still use the prehistoric power to untie it. These few days, He Xinzhou did not sleep well at all. She was crying and cursing again and again. At first, she was still thinking about Di Biming, but gradually she fell asleep. Di Biming saw that her breathing had calmed down, so he put her down and covered her with the blanket. Di Biming turned around and wanted to leave, but when he thought of Yun Chuzhi's painful look, he thought, what if she woke up and fell ill again? It was better to wait until he confirmed that she was fine before leaving. Yun Chuzhou slept until evening. When she woke up, she saw Di Biming sitting on the chair expressionlessly, like a statue, and the kind that was carved out of 10,000-year-old ice. When he saw Yun Chuzhou open her eyes, he asked, "Are you better?" Yun Chuzhou then remembered that she was pretending to be sick. She squeezed out a few tears and said, "Oh, my heart hurts." Di Biming frowned. Are there people who are proficient in medical skills among those people? Find them to help you. Don't delay the treatment. Yun Chuzhou was afraid that she would be exposed, so she quickly said, "All right, it's better now. I want Di. You should leave." She saw that Di Biming's brows were furrowed even more tightly. She was afraid that he would be suspicious, so she quickly added, "I'm fine. There are a few doctors, but they are all good at treating external injuries. I'm afraid that they won't be able to treat my illness. Prince Charming, you really don't need to care about me. You should leave. I'm used to carrying everything on my own. I can endure the pain even if it kills me." Di Biming felt his heart suffocate. Was he used to carrying everything on his own? Di Biming did not speak for a long time. He searched through many of his past memories and realized that this little girl was right. Although he was her fiancé, he did not seem to have done anything for her. Many times this little girl was the one who had braved through danger. He seemed to understand why he had liked this little girl in the past. She seemed to be very shameless and weak. Di Biming was silent for a while and then said, "If it's really a mental illness, then you can't be too worried and tired. I will help you get rid of Emperor Mu Xian. You can just rest in peace." Yun Chuzhi's eyes were instantly filled with tears. She sobbed and said, I know. Although I really want you to stay with me, I know you have something to do. You can go. I can do it alone." Di Biming looked at Yun Chuzhou, who was crying pitifully, and said in a gentler tone, "It's good that you're like this. I'll stay with you in the future after I solve the problem." After Di Biming finished speaking, he turned around and was about to leave when Yun Chuzhi's low sobs came from behind him. The sadness that he endured made the suffocation in his heart even stronger. He took a few more steps and finally turned around. He saw that the little girl was holding onto the blanket tightly and burying her entire body under the blanket. The blanket was trembling non-stop. It was obvious that she did not want him to hear, so she hid in the quilt and cried. Di Biming's legs suddenly felt heavy. He couldn't take another step out no matter what. He was silent for a long time. He clenched his fist, took out the voice transmission talisman and gave a few instructions. Then he turned around and returned to the bed. "Don't cry. I will accompany you for a few more days." Yun Chuzhi's little head poked out from under the quilt. Her eyes were as red as a rabbit's, but they were sparkling inside. "Really, you didn't lie to me?" Di Biming could not open his eyes because of Yun Chuzhi's sparkling eyes. He said indifferently, "This venerable self disdains lying." Yun Chuzhou hugged Di Biming's waist and muttered, "Although I know it's wrong to pester you like this, I just want to keep you by my side so that my heart won't hurt so much." Di Biming's body tensed up. He raised his hand to push Yun Chuzhou away, but his hand froze in the air when he heard her words. Forget it, she was a patient now, so he would allow her to be a little more presumptuous. A crafty look flashed across Yun Chuzhi's eyes. Little brat, even if you turn into a fucking wooden block, I will make you an honest wife slave. Just as Yoon Chujio was feeling pleased with herself, the voice transmission talisman in her storage ring started to vibrate. This fellow cursed in his heart, who the fuck is so tactless? What voice transmission talisman is this time? However, she was worried that it was related to the war, so she reluctantly let go of Di Baiming's waist. She took it out and saw that it was sent by Xue Wuji. Yoon Chujio sent her spiritual sense in, and Xue Wuji's loud voice was heard from inside. Little sister Jiu, I really admire you. You actually made that expressionless man change his mind. How did you do it? What idea? Yoon Chujio asked in confusion. That expressionless man just sent me a voice transmission talisman and asked Feng and I to kill Emperor Mu Xian immediately. He had planned to leave us in a horrible place for a few months. Little sister Jiu, you are really my savior. Chapter 3396 Empress Zhang. Yoon Chujio's heart was slightly sweet. No wonder the gigolo said that he would stay with her for a few days. It turned out that he had left the assassination of Emperor Mu to Xue Wuji and Feng. However, brother Wuji, can you and Feng kill Emperor Mu with your spiritual power? Little sister Jiu, I am now the one who has broken a part of the seal. Although I am not as crazy as that expressionless freak, I am still very powerful, okay? You haven't told brother yet. How did you make that zombie change his mind? I didn't even manage to change his expression when I tried to court death. How did you do it? Xue Wuji asked. Yoon Chujio's face turned red. Damn it, could she tell Xue Wuji that she sacrificed her looks? This guy shamelessly said, Brother Wuji, my idol loves me to the bone, so when he sees me he can't help but love me. Yoon Chujio waited for a long time but Xue Wuji did not reply. This guy did not care and kept the voice transmission talisman. Just as she was about to continue taking advantage of him, she heard Di Baiming say, Get a few military doctors to come over and take a look. Don't delay the treatment. Yoon Chujio blinked her eyes, picked up the voice transmission talisman and said a few words to Prime Minister Sima. Then she looked at Di Baiming pitifully. Prince Charming, can you hug me? I'm a little cold. This fellow even trembled a few times as he spoke. Di Baiming hesitated for a moment, but he still walked to the bedside and hugged Yoon Chujio and her in his arms. Then he used his spiritual power to help her warm up. Hei Xinjia's face was flushed red as she cursed in her heart. This gigolo was too honest. Luckily, she had the Gui Chao's beads to cool her down. Otherwise, she would have died from the heat. On the other side, Prime Minister Sima received His Majesty's voice transmission talisman and was dumbfounded. After being stunned for a while, he called over a few military doctors and ordered, I will bring you to His Majesty's treatment. You will tell him that His Majesty has a mental illness and there is no way to cure it. He can only recuperate slowly. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Moreover, you cannot have too big of a fluctuation in your emotions. Otherwise, your lives will be in danger. Do you understand? If you do not follow His Majesty's instructions, His Majesty will destroy your entire family. The few military doctors had a face full of fear and trepidation. They immediately nodded in agreement. After a while, Prime Minister Sima led the few military doctors to Yoon Chujio's courtyard. Prime Minister Sima looked at the broken pieces of the door on the floor, and saw that Yoon Chujio's eyes were as red as a rabbit's. He could not help but wonder what was going on. Their emperor was so thick-skinned that he actually cried like this. He glanced at the man sitting by the bed, but he did not dare to look at him again. This person's strength was really terrifying. The cold air on his body was simply freezing. He did not know how their emperor endured it. This is my fiancé. You can call him Empress D. Yoon Chujio felt Di Baiming's sharp gaze and changed her words. Just call him Your Majesty. Prime Minister Sima and the other doctors quickly bowed. Greetings, Your Majesty. Di Baiming hummed and said, Come over and take a look at her. One of the doctors was about to take her pulse when Di Baiming frowned and took out the handkerchief and placed it on Yoon Chujio's wrist. Yoon Chujio's heart skipped a beat. No matter how this pretty boy changed, his jealousy did not change. In the future, she could use this to stimulate him. After the few military doctors checked his pulse, their expressions were a little solemn. One of the elders said, His Majesty's illness should be a mental illness. Currently there is no good way. We can only recuperate quietly. It is best not to have any violent fluctuations in our emotions. Otherwise, the illness will worsen in the mild cases and the life of the severe cases will be in danger. Chapter 3397. Don't think about these messy things. D. Biming's tone was a little gloomy as he asked, is there really no way to completely cure it? The few military doctors were frightened by D. Biming's imposing manner, but when they thought of what Prime Minister Sima said earlier, they still said, Lord Bing, we are lacking in knowledge and are good at external injuries, so if you are worried, you can look for someone else to take a look. Yun Chujo sighed, Prince Charming, don't make things difficult for them. I know my own body. I will live as long as I can. When D. Biming heard Yun Chujio's words, his heart suddenly throbbed and the chill in his body spread out. Prime Minister Sima and the few military doctors were so scared that they trembled. Especially Prime Minister Sima. He was complaining in his heart. If this lord knew that they had lied to him in the future, he would definitely not spare them. Your Majesty, you are courting death. What kind of illness are you pretending to have? Yun Chujo saw that Prime Minister Sima and the few military doctors were trembling like leaves in the wind and waved her hand. You guys can go down and guard the city well. Prime Minister Sima and the others quickly scrambled out. Damn it, if they stayed any longer, they would definitely take the initiative to confess. This lord was too scary. Yun Chujo was about to say something when she heard D. Biming say, this venerable one will help you find a famous doctor. Even if it's a heart disease, it shouldn't be a difficult disease to treat. Also, after your body is slightly better, cultivate well for this venerable one. As long as you cultivate to the peak of spiritual link, you will be able to withstand this venerable one's spiritual power. When the time comes, even if you can't find a famous doctor, this venerable one can use spiritual power to help you repair your heart. Come and read on our website Wuxiao World site. Thanks. Yun Chujo secretly counted with her fingers. She was only at the 5th level of the spirit illusion realm. It was still early for her to cultivate to the peak of the spiritual link realm. During this period, she could continue to fool the pretty boy. Therefore, she nodded solemnly. Don't worry, my Prince Charming. I haven't lived long enough. I will definitely cultivate well. Oh right, my Prince Charming, since you can use your spiritual power to repair my heart, then when the time comes, can you also pull out the dog's tail from my dantian? Go Weiba asked Guai Chao, who was in his dantian. Felt as though he was cursing a dog in his heart. He was really unlucky today. Not only did he help to take the blame, he even wanted to get rid of it now. The dantian is different from other places. Once something goes wrong, your cultivation will be completely wasted, so it's better to find another way. D. Biming said in a deep voice. Yun Chujo pursed her lips. Forget it, if you can't get rid of it, then so be it. Anyway, the dog's tail is still quite obedient. Moreover, you don't want to have sex with me now, so it doesn't matter if I get rid of it or not. Guai Chao heaved a sigh of relief when it heard Yun Chujio's words. This black-hearted little girl had a conscience. Although it had done a few bad things in the beginning, it had already turned over a new leaf, alright? D. Biming's eyes darkened slightly. This venerable self will think of a way to get rid of Guai Chao for you. Also, you have to focus on your cultivation instead of thinking about things that don't exist. The reason why you are so weak is because your mind is focused on these meaningless things. Yun Chujio was stunned for a moment before she understood. D. Biming was referring to the matter of having sex. Her heart was filled with hatred. Good, very good. Gigolo, pretend that you don't have any desires. When you want to have sex with me in the future, if I don't torture you until you vomit blood, my name will not be Yun Chujio. Yun Chujio squeezed out a smile. Yes, my Prince Charming, you are right. From now on, I will focus solely on cultivation and will not think about these messy things anymore. Chapter 3398 was probably due to guilt. D. Biming nodded his head in satisfaction. Very good. Although your personality is a little naughty, at least you can listen to my opinions. It's not bad. Yun Chujio silently chanted a few times in her heart before saying, I will always listen to your words in the future, Prince Charming. Oh right, Prince Charming, when did you break the ice seal? What are your plans next? Less than 10 days ago. I have my own plans for the future. I will accompany you for a few days before leaving, Di Biming said calmly. Yun Chujo saw that Di Biming had returned to his ice-sculpted face, so she did not continue to question him. However, this guy counted with his fingers. This pretty boy probably came to find her as soon as he broke the ice seal, so he had a conscience. At this moment, Yun Chujia's stomach growled. This guy just remembered that she had not eaten anything for a day. Di Biming glanced at her. Hungry? Yun Chujo nodded happily. Even though the gigolo had lost his 7 emotions and 6 desires, he still cared about her. If he let her eat later, she would think of a way to let him feed her. Just as he was thinking happily, he saw Di Biming take out a porcelain bottle, poured out a fasting pill from it, and handed it to her. Eat it, Yun Chujo. Eat your head. You actually want me to eat fasting pills? Yun Chujo looked at the fasting pill in Di Biming's hand with disdain. I don't want to eat this thing. I want to eat warm food. Di Biming was slightly displeased. How can a cultivator be greedy for food? Besides, eating those dishes will waste a lot of time. If you have that time, can you use it to cultivate? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Yun Chujo looked at Di Biming with a blank face. Di Biming thought that she had been convinced by him. So he raised his hand and stuffed the fasting pill into Yun Chujia's mouth. Yun Chujo reacted and spat out the fasting pill. I don't care. I want to eat warm food. If you insist on me eating this fasting pill, I'd rather starve. Di Biming looked at the fasting pill on the ground and then at the indignant Yun Chujo. A hint of displeasure flashed across his eyes. As you wish. It's getting late, you should rest. After Di Biming finished speaking, he turned around and left the room. Yun Chujo was so angry that she gritted her teeth and cursed silently. Then she hurriedly took out the food and started eating. Damn it, no matter how angry she was, she could not treat her stomach badly. She was the one who was starving and uncomfortable. Di Biming pushed open the room next door. He used the cleaning spell to clean up the room before lying on the bed. He originally did not want to care about Hei Shinjo next door, but after thinking about it, he released his spiritual sense to check. He thought that the little girl would be so angry that she would cry again. He did not expect that the little girl's mouth was full of oil. She was eating a chicken drumstick in her hand. Di Biming. He shook his head. No wonder his spiritual power was so low and he was so greedy for food. He had to find a way to correct it. Otherwise, he would leave Towering Sky Continent soon. Her safety was a problem. Di Biming felt that his emotions had been calm ever since he broke the ice seal. But today, he felt that his emotions were constantly fluctuating along with that little girl. He could not help but frown. It must be because he felt guilty toward her. That was why it was like this. Yes, it must be like this. As the night deepened, Di Biming felt slightly sleepy. While he was half asleep, he sensed the sound of someone moving in the next room. Chapter 3399 Appreciating Beauty, right? Di Biming frowned slightly. Could it be that she had gotten up to drink water? Just as Di Biming was about to use his spiritual sense to check, he realized that the footsteps were approaching his room. Then, he realized that his room door had been carefully pushed open. Yun Chujia's little head looked at the door. When she saw that Di Biming was lying flat on the bed and did not make any movements, she quietly entered the room and closed the door. This guy tiptoed to the side of Di Biming's bed. Just as he was about to climb up, he saw Di Biming open his eyes and looked at her like a cold star. What are you doing? This guy's mind went blank for a moment. He was discovered climbing into a man's bed in the middle of the night. Wasn't it awkward? However, this guy's skin was unusually thick. He said pitifully, "The door of my room was smashed by you, so I was a little scared and wanted to sleep with you." Di Biming was slightly stunned. Only then did he remember that he had indeed smashed the door of the room next door. He sat up and got off the bed. In that case, you can sleep here. This venerable self will sleep next door. Prince Charming, can you stay with me? I haven't been able to sleep well these few days because I'm always worried that the people of the Jingmu Kingdom will catch up with me. I only feel safer with you by my side. Yun Chujo said pitifully. Di Biming originally wanted to refuse, but when he saw Yun Chujia's watery eyes, He said in the end, in that case you can sleep. I'll sit on the chair and watch you sleep. Yoon Choo-jo immediately smiled brightly and nodded vigorously. My Prince Charming, I knew you were the best to me. Lee Biming was a little absent-minded. Was this treating her well? Since she thought it was good, he would just watch her fall asleep for the next few days. Yoon Choo-jo climbed onto the bed with both hands and feet. She first laid down at the place where Lee Biming had laid down for a while, and then she climbed onto the bed and lay on her side. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks, Lee Biming asked in confusion. Why are you doing this? Yoon Choo-jo's little face was flushed red. She used her claws to point at the place where Lee Biming had laid down. Because there is your aura here, my Prince Charming. I just laid down for a while, and my body was stained with your aura. I feel very happy and at ease. Lee Biming suddenly had an indescribable feeling in his heart. It was as if there was some sour and sweet feeling. He was very repulsed by this kind of unfamiliar emotion. His face was covered with a layer of frost. It's getting late. Hurry up and sleep. Yoon Choo-jo saw Lee Biming's sudden change in expression, and could not help but curse in her heart. Crazy. He turned hostile just like that. Only I can tolerate this kind of crazy. This guy had slept for the whole afternoon. How could he sleep now? Therefore, he looked at Lee Biming, who was sitting on the chair without blinking. TSK. The more he looked, the more interesting he became. Especially that stuffy and flirtatious look that made people feel itchy. Lee Biming could not ignore the hot and stinging look that almost ate him up. He opened his eyes and said, What are you looking at with such a shifty look? If you don't want to sleep, go back to your own room. Sneaky eyes? Hey Shinjo almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He was clearly looking at her with his bright eyes, alright? Prince Charming, I'm looking at you. I think you're getting more and more handsome. There's nothing wrong with appreciating beauty, right? Yoon Choo-jo said pitifully. Lee Biming looked at her indifferently. There's nothing wrong with appreciating beauty, but how can you explain it when you're drooling while looking at it? Chapter 3400. The original body had lost his memory. Yoon Choo-jo blinked her eyes and said seriously, This is because I didn't eat dinner tonight, so I couldn't help but drool when I saw the delicious food. This is understandable. Lee Biming didn't eat dinner? Could it be that what he saw with his spiritual sense was just an illusion? How could a person who had eaten half a roast chicken still say that he didn't eat dinner? I'll give you two choices. One, close your eyes and sleep. The other, I'll go to another room. You can sleep here by yourself. Lee Biming said coldly. Yoon Choo-jo pursed her lips. I'm going to sleep now. You must not leave me alone. I'm timid and I'm afraid. Lee Biming looked at her meaningfully. He did not say anything. He turned around and took out a book to read. Yoon Choo-jo cursed in her heart. Bah! Who cares about looking at you? If you don't want to read, then don't read. Yoon Choo-jo turned over, closed her eyes, and began to force herself to sleep. Unfortunately, she slept too much during the day. Moreover, this fellow had been scheming about little Jojo in his heart, so he could not fall asleep no matter what. This fellow rolled his eyes and began to groan. It's so cold. I'm so cold. As he spoke, he shrunk his whole body into the quilt and kept shivering. Lee Biming frowned slightly and did not move. However, Yoon Choo-jo's moaning gradually turned into a low sob. He still got up and went to the bedside. After hesitating for a while, he hugged Yoon Choo-jo and the quilt in his arms and used his spiritual power to help her warm up. Yoon Choo-jo poked her head out from under the blanket and said with a stubborn expression, I don't need you to care about me. Just let me fend for myself. Lee Biming glanced at her and did not say anything. He did not want to care about her, but for some reason, he could not turn a blind eye to her crying. SOB, return my gigolo to me. My gigolo will not be angry at me. My gigolo is obedient to me. My gigolo tries his best to please me. My gigolo listens to everything I say. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks, Lee Biming said plainly. Little Joe, you have to understand one thing. I don't have 7 emotions and 6 desires, but I don't have amnesia. Yoon Choo-jo, this guy blinked his eyes guiltily. No matter what, my gigolo will hug me to sleep and sing me a lullaby. Do you know it? No. Lee Biming looked through the memories and felt that he was an idiot. He actually sang her a lullaby? Yun Chujo pursed her lips and did not say anything else. However, she thought to herself, pretty boy, just you wait. The cause that you planted and the bitter fruit that you bear, you will swallow it even if you cry in the future. She did not know whether it was because it was late at night or because she was carried by Di Biming, but this fellow finally yawned a few times and fell into a deep sleep. Di Biming saw that she was asleep and placed her on the side of the bed. Just as he was about to leave, he noticed that Yun Chujia's hand was tightly holding onto his clothes. He frowned and cut off the piece of cloth, then turned around and got off the bed. Di Biming placed a futon on the ground and began to meditate. I don't want you to leave. Prince Charming, you can't die. Di Biming opened his eyes and looked at the bed. He saw that the little girl had pushed the blanket away. Her hands were waving unconsciously, and tears were flowing down from the corners of her eyes. However, even so, she was still holding the piece of cloth tightly. Di Biming felt a pain in his heart. He almost subconsciously walked to the side of the bed and held Yun Chujia's hand. It's okay, I'm here. Chapter 3401. The Jingmu kingdom attacked again. Yun Chujio was like a drowning person who had found a floating board. She held Di Biming's arm in her arms. There were tears in the corners of her eyes, but her lips curled up into a curve. Di Biming's bent posture was really uncomfortable. He gritted his teeth and could only lie on the outside of the bed. In her sleep, Yun Chujio seemed to feel a heat source. She let go of Di Biming's arm and then nestled into Di Biming's arms. Di Biming's body stiffened. He really did not like to be so close to others. However, he could not bear to push Yun Chujio away. He lowered his head and saw that Yun Chujio was sleeping soundly. It was as if the nightmare from before had passed. He hugged her tightly. If he moved slightly, she would move along with him. She would even moan. Di Biming had no choice but to let her hug him. He thought that he would be so uncomfortable that he would open his eyes until daybreak. He did not expect that he would also slowly fall asleep. The next morning, Yun Chujio opened her eyes and found herself in Di Biming's embrace. She could not help but be stunned. Wasn't this pretty boy supposed to have no desires? Why was he hugging her? Aren't you cold now? Why aren't you letting go of me? Di Biming's cold voice sounded above her head. Yun Chujio pouted in her heart. It was clearly him who was hugging her, all right? However, she still had to give him a way out. Hence, she said weakly, thank you for last night. My body is getting weaker and weaker. Please forgive me for offending you. Hearing Yun Chujio's polite words, Di Biming couldn't help but feel a little depressed, but he couldn't tell what the reason was. At this moment, the sound transmission talisman in Yun Chujio's storage ring rang. It was sent by Prime Minister Sima. Your Majesty, the Jingmu Kingdom's army is heading towards Puyang City. They should be preparing to attack the city again. Yun Chujio's heart tightened. She directly climbed over Di Biming's body, then got off the bed and put on her shoes. Prince Charming, the Jingmu Kingdom is attacking the city again. I have to go take a look. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Before Di Biming could react, this guy had already rushed out. Di Biming recalled the touch just now and was slightly stunned. After a moment he stood up and frowned slightly. Then he rushed towards the city wall. When Yun Chujio reached the city wall, the Jingwood Kingdom's army had already arrived at the city wall aggressively. The Crown Prince Jing Jiahong was killed. Emperor Muxian was furious. He gave Shang Liangxin and the others their lives. Either they killed Yun Chujio and her wild man, or they destroyed their entire family. Shang Liangxin and the others had no choice. Although they knew that Di Biming was not to be trifled with, they had no choice but to force themselves to attack the city again. They lied to themselves and comforted themselves. Although that wild man was powerful, it was difficult for him to fight against 4 hands with 2 fists. They had tens of thousands of people, so why should they be afraid of him? The reason why the Crown Prince was killed by him was that the Crown Prince was not on guard. That wild man was nothing special. When Shang Liang saw that there was only Yun Chujio on the city wall, and there was no sign of that wild man, he immediately became more confident. He reckoned that the wild man had already left. The heavens were really helping their Jingmu kingdom. Yun Chujio, I advise you to surrender immediately. This way, you and your subordinates' lives can still be saved. Otherwise, don't blame us for not being polite. Shang Liangxin said arrogantly. Yun Chujio curled her lips. Are you stupid? Don't you know that my fiancé is very powerful? Even your bullshit crown prince was killed by my fiancé. How dare you come here to court death? You guys are really stupid. Bah! Bitch! That wild man was just lucky. You dogs, men and women don't even think about living. Shang Liangxin's words came to an abrupt end, because there was an ice arrow stuck between his brows, and he had actually died. Chapter 3402. You will always live in my heart. The army of the Jingmu kingdom was originally lacking in confidence. Now that Shang Liangxin had been killed, they were in a mess. It was only then that they saw the man standing beside the female emperor, and looking at them coldly. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines. They did not dare to resist at all. The senior generals looked at each other. They did not believe that Emperor Muxian would kill them all. This man was unfathomable. They were no match for him. It was better to go back and make a long-term plan. Therefore, under the leadership of the senior generals, the army of the Jingmu kingdom disappeared without a trace. Prime Minister Sima was dumbfounded. Damn, this fiancé of His Majesty was really powerful. He actually scared off tens of thousands of the Jingmu kingdom's army the moment he showed up? Yun Chujio felt a little bitter and proud at the same time. Damn, when did I become so awesome? Just as he was thinking about it, he heard Di Baiming say coldly, "Follow me back." Although his voice was no different from usual, Yun Chujio could still hear some anger in it. This guy couldn't help but feel a little confused. What did I do to provoke him? However, this fellow had always been tactful. After giving a few words to Prime Minister Sima, he followed Di Baiming and left the city wall. Along the way, Di Baiming did not say anything. Yun Chujio could not figure out what this crazy person meant, so she did not say anything. The two of them walked silently into the city lord's mansion. After entering the house, Di Baiming sat on a chair. Yun Chujio was about to sit down when she heard Di Baiming say coldly, "Do you think I'm dead? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." Thanks. Yun Chujio was so shocked by his sudden words that she almost sat on the ground. She said weakly, "Prince Charming, where did you start? How can I think you're dead? You will always live in my heart." Di Baiming. Yun Chujio felt that something was wrong after she said that. She smiled embarrassedly, then she said, "Prince Charming, what did I do to offend you? Is it because I slept in your house, your bed, and your man yesterday?" Di Baiming's frown deepened. What did he mean by sleeping with his man? If he wanted to sleep with her, he should be the one sleeping with her, okay? When Di Baiming thought of this, he could not help but be distracted and did not speak for a long time. When Yun Chujio saw that Di Baiming did not speak, her heart could not help but beat faster. Could it be that the gigolo had found out that she was pretending to be sick? She did not give herself away, did she? Originally, this mental illness was very serious when it flared up. Usually it was as if nothing had happened. He should not have noticed any flaws, right? Or was it because she pretended to ask for a hug yesterday? That shouldn't be the case. He was afraid that he would confess if he said anything wrong, so he sat on the chair silently. Di Baiming came back to his senses and turned to look at a certain Jiao who was pretending to be calm. He squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth. "Don't try to be strong if you're not feeling well." Yun Chujio pondered over the meaning of this sentence and finally understood. Was the pretty boy angry because she had abandoned him and went to fight alone? Did this mean that he was feeling sorry for her? When Yun Chujio thought of this, a hint of sweetness rose from the bottom of her heart. She held her chin and blinked her starry eyes at Di Baiming. "Prince Charming, are you saying this because you are worried about my health? Are you feeling sorry for me?" Chapter 3403. The unlucky Meng Yanshou. Di Baiming's expression froze, and then he said coldly, "Don't think about these things all day long. Since you're already alive and kicking, hurry up and start cultivating." Yun Chujio pursed her lips. Damn it, she hated it the most. "Prince Charming, I haven't eaten breakfast yet. I'll start cultivating after eating." Biming took out a porcelain bottle containing fasting pills and poured out a fasting pill. Seeing the look of disdain on Yoon Chujia's face, he had no choice but to put it in his mouth. Biming gave her a look of self-care, then turned around and went to the room next door. Yoon Chujio slowly began to eat breakfast. She estimated that there were still 5 or 6 days left before Emperor Nanxian and the others could take down the other 6 vassal states. When that time came, it would be time to start a war with the Jingmu Kingdom. After taking down the Jingmu Kingdom, even the other second-tier countries would not dare to provoke the 4-tier alliance so easily. She would be able to live in peace for a period of time. Although she knew that Biming was very powerful now, Xue Wuji had once said that Biming still had enemies to deal with. It was obvious that he could not stay by her side forever, so she had to rely on herself. After eating breakfast, Yoon Chujio strolled out of the house and went straight to Biming's room. Biming continued to cultivate with his eyes closed, ignoring this guy. This guy walked around the house, then sat down cross-legged next to Biming, closed his eyes and began to cultivate. Biming tried his best to ignore Yoon Chujia's influence on him. But no matter what, there was still a ripple in his heart. He frowned. How could this be? Biming tried his best to calm his emotions before continuing to cultivate. Soon a day had passed. Hei Shinjo stood up and stretched. Then she looked at Biming, who was still meditating expressionlessly. She said with a smile, "Idle, it's time for dinner. Don't eat the fasting pills today. I'll roast meat for you. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." Thanks. Biming didn't even open his eyes. He said indifferently, "No need. You can eat it yourself." Yoon Chujio did not say anything. She hopped out of the room. Very soon, Biming, who was meditating in the room, smelled the aroma of the roasted meat. Since the room he was in did not have a door, the aroma was exceptionally strong. Biming shook his head slightly. In his opinion, the roasted meat was no different from the fasting pills. Moreover, it took a lot of time and effort. It was really asking for trouble. Just as he was thinking about it, he heard Yoon Chujia's smiling voice from the door. "Xiaohei, curly hair. The roasted meat today is not bad, right?" "Master, I haven't eaten the roasted meat that you personally cooked for a long time. The roasted meat is sizzling and oozing oil. It's really too fragrant," Xiao Hanio said with his green bean-like eyes. Meng Yanshou was chewing the roasted meat in its mouth and said vaguely, "I feel that I'm really blissful now. There's meat to eat and there's a story to read. Even deities wouldn't change on days like this." Biming couldn't help but sneer in his heart. What kind of master would raise a spiritual pet? The spiritual pets that little Jiu raised were also foodies who didn't want to improve themselves. Yoon Chujio gave Meng Yanshou a look, and Meng Yanshou gritted his teeth with a bitter look. He said slyly, "Little fairy, I read those storybooks. Once a woman becomes the female emperor or something, she will marry many male concubines. How many do you plan to marry?" Meng Yanshou's heart was like a beeping dog. This little girl was really too mean. Why didn't she let that ugly bird ask such a question? Why did she have to let it ask? Although the fiend in the room no longer had 7 emotions and 6 desires, even a man wouldn't be able to tolerate his woman having several men, right? It already had a premonition that a storm was coming. Chapter 34:04 Yoon Chujio looked at Meng Yanshou approvingly and then said faintly, "I haven't thought about this yet. People say that there are 3 palaces, 6 courtyards, and 72 concubines. I can't be too little, right? Otherwise, people will look down on me." As soon as Yoon Chujio finished her words, Xiao Hanio and Meng Yanshou felt like they were going to be frozen into popsicles. However, their master, who was courting death, continued to say, "There are many types of handsome men. If I marry one of each type, there should be at least dozens of them. Fortunately, I have money. Even if I marry more, I can still afford to raise them." Whoosh! Whoosh! Xiao Hanio and Meng Yanshou were thrown out of the yard like kites with broken strings. The 2 poor kids who shared the same fate looked at each other. Damn it, it was not a good thing that they could speak human language. If not for the fact that they were the only ones who could speak human language, the black-hearted master would not have let them do such a wicked thing. The nightmare beast felt that it was even more miserable than the little black bird. The little black bird only said that the roast meat was delicious. But it said those words. That Jinx would deal with it sooner or later. It was simply hopeless. Their black-hearted master was currently in the middle of the storm. Fortunately, this fellow had always been thick-skinned. Even though he was being stared at by Biming, he still continued to eat the roast meat leisurely. Prince Charming, why are you out? Did you smell the aroma of the roast meat and want to eat it too? Biming stared at her gloomily and said coldly, 3 palaces, 6 courtyards and 72 concubines? Marry one of each type? How dare you? Yun Chujo raised her head and glanced at him. Prince Charming, don't you have no emotions now? Then you definitely won't have sex with me, right? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks, but I still want to give birth to a monkey. If you don't want to have sex with me, then I'll find someone else to have sex with. Is there a problem with that? Don't worry, I'll reserve the position of queen for you. You're the most important thing in my heart. Biming took a deep breath, and his expression became even uglier. He said gloomily, you have a Guai Chao in your dantian. How can you have an affair with someone else? Guai Chao can be removed sooner or later. I'll marry it first and keep it in the harem to prepare for it. I don't want to be caught off guard. Besides, even if I can't have sex with them, they can hug me and sleep with me when I'm afraid of the cold. Yun Chujia's face showed a yearning expression. The moment Biming thought of Yun Chujio being hugged by another man, the anger in his heart was like a rising flame, almost exploding him. If you dare to do that, I will. Yun Chujio threw the barbecued meat in her hand onto the ground, pointed at Biming and said, what will you do? Pretty boy, I have tolerated you for 2 days. Don't think that I will always accommodate you. Do you think that you are so great just because you don't have any emotions? You were born to be my person, and you are my ghost even if you die. I can touch you if I want to, and I can sleep with you if I want to. If you continue to act pretentious with me, I will divorce my husband and marry someone else. As Yun Chujio spoke, she stood on her tiptoes and forcefully hugged Biming's neck. She bit his lips. This fellow really bit him until he tasted a trace of fresh blood. Only then did she plan to let Biming go. Who would have thought that Biming's initially stiff hands would suddenly hug her? The hot kiss was like a storm, instantly causing He Shinjo to be kissed until the sky turned dark. After a long time, Biming finally let go of Yun Chujio. There were still faint traces of blood on his lips, and He Xinjia's lips were also slightly red and swollen. Moreover, it was obvious that she was a little stunned by the kiss. She changed her previous route of the overlord flower and looked pitiful like a little white flower swaying in the wind and rain. Oh. Chapter 3405 gave him another slap after a long silence. Biming shook the hand in his sleeve and said in a cold voice, I did this just now to tell you that even without the 7 emotions and 6 desires, I can still be a gentleman with you. If you dare to provoke another man, I will destroy his entire family. If you don't believe me, you can try. After Biming finished speaking, he did not care about Yun Chujia's reaction and directly turned around and entered the house. Yun Chujio was stunned for a while. Then she touched her slightly red and swollen lips and cursed in her heart. What the fuck? Pretentious. This fellow recalled what Biming said just now. His eyes were burning with high fighting spirit. Pretty boy, let's wait and see. At this moment Biming's heart was in a mess in the room. He calmed down and understood that Yun Chujia's words about marrying a concubine were meant to anger him. However, he still felt a sense of frustration. He could not describe what he felt in his heart. The moment he closed his eyes, the image of that passionate kiss appeared in his mind. Why did he feel a sense of satisfaction and joy when he did something that should have been something that he rejected? He remembered that Yun Chujio had bitten his lips like a violent lion, and some parts of his body had actually. Biming gritted his teeth in frustration and took out Xue Wuji's voice transmission talisman. If you two can't kill Emperor Mu Xian within 5 days, then you don't have to live anymore. I don't raise trash. On the other side, when Xue Wuji received Biming's voice transmission talisman, he felt as if his heart was going to explode. Wasn't this person expressionless? Why did he suddenly lose his temper? Damn it. He must have been taught a lesson by little sister Jiu. That was why he took it out on them. How shameless. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Biming put away the voice transmission talisman. He thought that once Mu Xian died, he would help her to calm down the situation and then he could leave. As long as he could not see her, he would not feel guilty and would not be affected by her emotions. Then everything would return to normal. At this moment, Xiao Hanyo and Meng Yanshou sneaked back to the courtyard. Xiao Hanyo's strong body was fine, but Meng Yanshou was in trouble. Its body was a level 1 windblade rabbit. When it returned to Yun Chuzhou, it was only left with one breath. Little fairy, I have given my all for you. If you have a conscience, change my shell this time. Meng Yanshou said as he took his last breath. Yun Chuzhou ignored him and took out a windblade rabbit. Even though Meng Yanshou was unwilling, he didn't dare to say anything when he thought about the bad guy in the house. At this moment the night was getting darker. Yun Chuzhou didn't greet Biming and went back to the house next door. Biming thought that Yun Chuzhou would call him over, but Yun Chuzhou didn't call him at midnight. She didn't cry either. Biming hesitated for a moment. He used his divine sense to scan the room next door. He saw Yun Chuzhou sitting in a bathtub. Her head was tilted to the side and she fainted. Biming's heart tightened. He quickly ran over. His speed was so fast that he only left an afterimage. Biming rushed into the room and hurriedly carried Yun Chuzhou out of the bathtub. Little Joe, what's wrong? Are you having a heart attack again? Yun Chuzhou opened her eyes and looked at him in confusion. Then she looked at her naked body and slapped Biming. Pervert. Chapter 3406 Despise people like you who did not mean what they said. Only then did Biming realize that the person in his arms was not wearing anything. Her snow-white skin was like fine white jade. He suddenly threw Yun Chuzhou onto the bed and left the room in a panic. Biming stood at the door with a blank mind. Yun Chuzhou's palm print was still on his face. He was stunned for a while like a wooden sculpture. Hei Xinzhou, who was in the room, was also very upset. She really did not do it on purpose this time. Damn it, no matter how thick-skinned she was, she could not do such a thing. She was in a bad mood, so when she returned to the room, she took out her phone book to pass the time. After looking at it, she realized that it was late at night. In addition, the smell of the barbecued meat made her smell like fireworks, so she got out the bathtub. She wanted to take a shower before going to bed. Who would have thought that she was so tired that she actually fell asleep while taking a shower? When this fellow thought of the situation just now, her face immediately turned red and she was extremely angry. She had also let down her guard because he was here. Moreover, Biming's spiritual power was much higher than hers, so she did not notice that someone had come. Her body was wet, and she could not just lie there. She could only get up and wipe her body, and then she began to change the bedding. Biming heard the movement in the room, and only then did he come back to his senses. He said coldly, I mistakenly thought that you fainted, that's why I did it. You should rest. Yun Chuzhou's disdainful voice came from the room. Bah! I don't like people like you who don't mean what you say. You obviously covet my beauty, but you pretend to be serious. Who are you lying to? Biming opened his mouth, but he did not know how to explain. He turned around and was about to leave when Yun Chuzhou opened the door from inside. She looked at him with a faint smile. If you don't feel guilty, then sleep with me. Otherwise, you're afraid that you won't be able to control yourself if you sleep with me. Biming looked at Yun Chuzhou's fair little face and unconsciously glanced at her still dripping long hair. Something seemed to be slowly waking up in his body. He turned around stiffly. He said coldly, I don't need to prove anything to you. Rest in peace. After saying that, Biming turned around and walked into the room next door. However, his footsteps were slightly flustered. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Yun Chuzhou pouted and closed the door with a bang. When Biming returned to the room, the scene of kissing in the daytime flashed in his mind. It was the beautiful scene that he saw just now. It took him a long time to calm down. He thought for a while and thought that maybe he had just broken the seal, which was why his realm wasn't stable. That was why he was easily affected by external things. With that thought, he finally calmed down. Lying on the bed, he closed his eyes and prepared to sleep. After a while, he suddenly sat up. When he opened the door, that little rascal's hair was wet. She wouldn't just sleep like that, would she? If that was the case, she might catch a cold. If she caught a cold, it would trigger a mental illness. The more Biming thought about it, the more he felt that the situation was a little serious. He immediately got out of the bed and walked quickly to Chujie's house. He was about to raise his hand to push the door open, but he stopped again. What happened? If he was worried that she would catch a cold, he could have used his spiritual sense to scan her. Why did he rush over here in such a hurry? He did not want to think too much. Just as he was about to use his spiritual sense to check the situation inside, he heard Chujie's faint voice from inside the room. The night is long, and only the 5 of you are with me. You are much stronger than that pretty boy. Not only are you strong and powerful, but you are also absolutely loyal to me. Chapter 3407. How to secure the door. Biming saw the 5 tall figures reflected on the window paper. When he thought of what Chujio had just said, he was so angry that he almost exploded. 5? So what she had said during the day was not a joke. She had already prepared everything. Was the one today the strong type? Biming raised his hand and smashed the door into pieces. When he saw the situation inside the room, he was stunned. There were 5 puppets made of 1,000-year-old black iron on the ground. They were not the 5 adulterers that he had imagined. When the 5 puppets saw Biming enter, they automatically protected Chujio behind them. Just when Biming was feeling extremely awkward, Chujio said faintly, "Prince Charming, you are really lacking in the 5 elements. Did you have a grudge with the sect in your previous life? You also smashed the door of this house. How am I supposed to sleep at night? This venerable self will help you remove the door." Biming left these words, leaving only an afterimage of Chujio. Chujio pouted and said to the 5 puppets, "It seems that there's no need for you to stand guard for me tonight. A fool has delivered himself to my door." Chujio put away the 5 puppets, then lay on the bed and looked at a certain person who quickly returned with a door. Chujio curled her lips slightly. It seemed that the pretty boy's heart was still in a mess. Otherwise, why didn't he put the door into his storage ring and carried it over by himself? How could Biming do such a rough job like in men? After a long time, he still hadn't settled down. He could only take out Enfeng's voice transmission talisman and asked gloomily, "How are you going to Men?" Enfeng, who was rushing to the scenery city, was speechless. A familiar smell. A familiar formula. Did their lord break the door of the 9th miss again? If you have the ability, don't fix the door for her. You really owe her. Although Enfeng was complaining in his heart, he still gave a detailed and patient instruction to Enfeng. After all, Enfeng could be said to be familiar with the door. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Speaking of which, he felt bitter and sad. He had helped their esteemed lord and the palace master's wife to settle down countless doors. It was truly a sin. Finally, Enfeng guided a certain N to settle down the doors. A certain Zhou's smiling voice was heard just as a certain Zhou was about to leave. "Prince Charming, since you can't sleep because you're thinking about me when you go back, then stop tormenting yourself. Let's sleep together." Biming wanted to refute her, but when he saw that Chujio's hair was still wet, he immediately walked towards Chujio unhappily. Chujio saw the anger in Biming's eyes and her heart tightened. She was done for. She had gone too far. Would this crazy person spank her little bottom? Biming walked to the bedside and said unhappily, "Why don't you dry your hair?" Chujio, while this guy was still confused, he saw Biming pull her up and take out a handkerchief to dry her hair. Then he used his spiritual power to help her dry her hair completely. Don't you know that you have a mental illness? What if you catch a cold and it causes a mental illness? You spend the whole day thinking about useless things. Why aren't you paying attention to these important things? Chujio was dumbfounded. Did the living dead become a chatterbox? Biming finally finished his long speech and said, "I'm not concerned about you, nor am I concerned about you. If your mental illness were to happen again, I wouldn't be able to leave to handle my matters. Don't think too much." Chujio, this fellow curled his lips in his heart. Was it useful to say these words to an experienced driver like her? Chapter 3408 was a step-by-step process. Hei Shinjo rolled her eyes, and bad water came out of her eyes. She looked like she was about to cry. Sob. I know that I don't have any status in your heart. I'm your burden. If that's the case, why do you care about me? Just let me live and die on my own. Biming was very annoyed when he saw this, but he did not know what to say. His heart was in a mess now, and he could only say with a straight face, "It's late. Go to sleep." While he was half asleep, Biming only realized later. Why was he sleeping here in a daze? Just as he was thinking, Yun Chujo was nestled in his arms again, muttering, "Beauty, my little beauty." Just as Biming was in a daze, the person in his arms started to move up, down, and her hands. Biming was both embarrassed and annoyed. Why did everything go wrong when he met this little girl? He got off the bed in anger and stood by the side of the bed, looking at a certain Jo who continued to move up, down, and her hands. He was speechless. He stood by the side of the bed for a while, and his chaotic mood calmed down a lot. His face returned to its usual calm. He took out the futon and began to meditate on the ground. The next morning, Hei Shinjo opened her eyes and stretched. Then she caught a glimpse of Biming, who was meditating on the ground. This fellow looked at the quilt that she had crushed into a ball and felt a little annoyed. What the fuck? She had thought that the gigolo had been enlightened, but it seemed that he had to simmer it down slowly. Yun Chujo felt that she could not force him too much. She had to take things slowly and gradually. Therefore, after he got up, he did not continue to act like a demon. He washed up and ate his breakfast. He did not bother with Biming, who was meditating. Biming naturally noticed that Yun Chujo had woken up. He thought that Yun Chujo would pester him again and ask him to prepare breakfast. He did not expect that Hei Shinjo did not bother with him at all. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Biming felt a hint of unhappiness in his heart. He could not tell exactly why he was unhappy, so he decided not to think about it and continued to meditate on the ground. Yun Chujo finished her breakfast and said to Biming, who was meditating, "I'm going to the city wall to inspect it. I reckon that you don't have time to accompany me, so I'll go by myself. You can continue to cultivate." Yun Chujo did not wait for Biming's reply. She walked out of the courtyard and came to the bottom of the city wall. When the soldiers of the Dongfeng Kingdom saw Yun Chujo, they all knelt down and bowed. The female emperor of Zephyr City toppling beauty is unparalleled in the world. Even the soldiers of the other three kingdoms also knelt down and bowed. After fighting side by side for this period of time, they admired the courage and wisdom of the female emperor of Zephyr City toppling beauty from the bottom of their hearts. The prestige of the female emperor of Zephyr was even higher than that of their own country's monarch. Yun Chujo waved her claws indifferently. "All of you get up. It's been tough defending the city, but don't worry, I won't mistreat you." Hearing Yun Chujo's words, everyone cheered again. Not far away, Biming, who followed closely, saw this scene, and the feelings in his heart became even more complicated. Although he had removed a part of the seal and his spiritual power had increased greatly, he still did not have his own power. In some aspects he could not even compare to little Jo. It seemed that he had to take back what originally belonged to him. Yun Chujo inspected the city wall and found nothing unusual. The people of the Jingmu Kingdom were probably scared out of their wits by the gigolo. Chapter 3409 was a certain someone in, and Men Yun Chujo went down the city wall and found Biming standing not far away. This guy curled his lips in his heart. Didn't he not care about her? Wasn't his heart like dead water? Then why did he follow her here? For a walk? This guy walked to Biming's side and said in surprise, Prince Charming, why are you here? Are you concerned about me? Biming looked at her coldly and said coldly, I'm just taking a walk. Yun Chujo. She couldn't be bothered to expose him. Anyway, there was still a long way to go, and there would be a chance to deal with him sooner or later. After returning to the city lord's mansion, Hei Shinjo still ignored Biming and didn't follow Biming to his house. Instead, she entered the house without a door and continued to draw talismans. Biming meditated and cultivated for a while. He felt a little irritated. After hesitating for a while, He released his spiritual sense to check. He saw that the little girl was concentrating on drawing talismans. Biming stared at Yoon Chujia's focus side profile and couldn't help but feel a little dazed. At this moment, Yoon Chujio seemed to have sensed something and tilted her head to blink her eyes. Biming was so scared that he immediately retracted his spiritual sense. His heart was beating violently. Could it be that she had discovered it? How could it be? His spiritual sense was very powerful. How could that little girl notice him? It must be a coincidence. Even so, Biming did not dare to release his spiritual sense to check. That little girl was too cunning. If she knew that he did this, she would definitely climb up. Biming closed his eyes and wanted to continue meditating. However, no matter what he said, he could not calm down. He was really annoyed. What was wrong with him? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. He paced back and forth in the room, and then his gaze fell on the door at the door. A glimmer of light flashed in his eyes, and he hurriedly left the room. A moment later, Yoon Chujio, who was concentrating on drawing talismans in the room, saw a certain someone carrying a door and walking to the door expressionlessly. This door was broken by me. I will help you install the door, Biming said coldly. Yoon Chujio nodded and continued to draw the talisman. Seeing this, the uneasiness in the heart of a certain venerate grew even more. He started to draw the door. Not to mention getting familiar with it, the efficiency of a certain venerate had greatly increased. After drawing the door, a certain venerate glanced at He Shinjio, who was still focused on drawing the talisman. He frowned and said unhappily, "Don't you know that you have a mental illness? You have been drawing for several hours. Do you want your mental illness to flare up and win my sympathy?" Yoon Chujio finally lifted her head and looked at him. "You are a person without emotions and desires. How would you know what sympathy is? However, you are right. I have indeed been drawing for a long time. I will go out for a walk. You can cultivate in the city lord's mansion. You don't have to protect me." After Yoon Chujio finished speaking, she put away the talisman brush and strolled out of the house. She did not bother with a certain someone whose expression was obviously not too good. Biming looked at Yoon Chujio's lively back and felt very annoyed. Just when he was unable to process his thoughts, a sharp pain came from his body. His expression changed and he hurriedly sat down cross-legged. He used his spiritual power to suppress the intense pain and coldness that kept on surging. Soon his body was covered in a layer of ice. The ice was getting thicker and thicker, and he looked like an ice sculpture. Yoon Chujio hopped around outside. She did not know why, but she was a little flustered. She had no choice but to hop back to the city lord's mansion. Chapter 34:10 I know what's going on. The moment Yoon Chujio got close to her courtyard, she felt a bone-chilling cold. She pushed open the door and saw that the trees, flowers, and plants in the courtyard had all been frozen to the point of withering. Her heart tightened, and when she raised her head, she saw Biming, who had already become an ice sculpture. Yoon Chujio's head buzzed. Just as she was about to go forward and help Biming break the hard ice on Biming's body suddenly exploded, and Biming opened his eyes. Yoon Chujio's heart tightened. If the previous Biming still had a trace of humanity and anger, then the current Biming was really no different from an ice sculpture. What was going on? Biming looked at Yoon Chujio without any emotion in his eyes. He only said in a declarative tone, "I will go and take care of Emperor Mu Xian now. I believe you can handle the rest of the matters on your own. If you have a mental illness, I will find a famous doctor to treat you. You don't have to worry. If you are in any danger, just send me a voice transmission talisman." After Biming finished speaking, he turned into an afterimage and disappeared in front of Yoon Chujio. Yoon Chujio was stunned for a moment. Did this mean that all her previous efforts had been in vain? How did things turn out like this after she went out? Yoon Chujio felt that all the strength in her body had been drained and she collapsed on the ground. What exactly was going on? The nightmare beast that was kept by Yoon Chujio in the bushes jumped over while trembling. "Damn, I'm freezing to death. I'm really envious of long hair now. Little fairy, don't be anxious. I know what's going on." Meng Yanshou looked at Yoon Chujio. Yoon Chujio looked up at Meng Yanshou. "Speak. Meng Yanshou knew that Yun Chuzhou was in a bad mood, so he didn't dare to keep her in suspense. He quickly said, Shang Zun's body is frozen. His old illness must have relapsed. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks, I think he sealed his 7 emotions and 6 desires to resist the cold poison. Previously you aroused his mortal heart, so the seal was loosened, so his old illness immediately flared up. When his old illness acted up, he had no choice but to seal his 7 emotions and 6 desires again. Moreover, it seems that the seal is even tighter than the last time, so he has become even colder. When Yun Chuzhou heard Meng Yanshou's words, her heart welled up with traces of pain. If there was still some resentment before, now it had turned into tenderness. She bit her lips. Forget it. Next time she would not flirt with him. Anyway, it was good that she knew that he had her in his heart. When the old illness was cured, she would look for him to settle the score. Yun Chuzhi's ability to adjust her heart was extraordinary. Thinking of this, she did not feel so bad anymore. She took out a voice transmission talisman from her storage ring. Prince Charming, I will take care of myself. You have to be careful. On the other side, Di Baiming received Yun Chuzhi's voice transmission talisman. His expression did not change at all, but he still replied with an emotionless When Yun Chuzhou heard Di Baiming's she was very satisfied. At the very least she could still answer her. This was not bad. Alright, her requirements were already so low. There was no one else who had such a good-tempered girlfriend. Just as Yun Chuzhou was thinking about it, Shui Wuji's voice transmission talisman started to vibrate. Little sister Jiu, what did you do? Why did that expressionless man change his mind again? Did he ask Enfeng and me to return to that damned place again? Brother Wuji has a long story to tell. In short, he originally returned to the secular world, but now he has shaved his head again. On the other side, Shui Wuji. Chapter 34:11 was an all-out war at night. Yun Chuzhou had a barbecue party with the silly girls in the yard. Her depressed mood was finally somewhat relieved. There was indeed a famous saying that nothing could not be solved by a barbecue. If one meal was not enough, then two. 2 days later, Emperor Muxian suddenly died. A few princes of the Jingmu kingdom began to fight for the throne. The army stationed in the East Phoenix kingdom had all retreated back to the Jingmu kingdom. Hei Xinzhou blinked her eyes. This was a once-in-lifetime opportunity. She would be a fool if she didn't seize this opportunity to conquer the Jingwood kingdom. Therefore, after Emperor Nanxian and the others had conquered all 6 vassal states, the allied army of the 4 kingdoms began to conquer the Jingwood kingdom. The princes of the Jingwood kingdom didn't have the energy to resist the foreign enemies anymore. They were all trying to seize the throne. Moreover, they didn't care about the allied forces of the 4 countries at all. They thought that the Jingmu kingdom's cities were strong, and the allied forces of the 4 countries wouldn't be able to take down a few cities in a short time. It wouldn't be too late to deal with the allied forces of the 4 countries after the throne was confirmed. Unexpectedly, when the fight for the throne of the Jingmu kingdom finally came to an end, the newly ascended Emperor Gongzhou received the news that the allied forces of the 4 countries had already taken over half of the Jingmu kingdom's territory before he could sit firmly on the throne. They were heading towards Ganshi City. Emperor Gongzhou felt a little numb. If the 4-country alliance army took over Ganshi City, then the defense line of the Jingmu kingdom would collapse. It was very likely that the 4-country alliance army would take over Jing City. Emperor Gongzhou quickly mobilized 200,000 troops to Ganshi City. He was determined to stop the 4-country alliance army in Ganshi City, and even chase them out of the Jingmu kingdom. The general who led the troops this time was an old acquaintance of Yun Chuzhou. It was Imperial Chancellor Lu. Imperial Chancellor Lu was really good at following the wind. When he heard that the crown prince had died, he directly placed his bet on Emperor Gongzhou. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. After Imperial Chancellor Lu ascended the throne, he immediately married Lu Hanyan as his empress. Imperial Chancellor Lu once again became the ruler of 1 man and 10,000 men. Therefore, Imperial Chancellor Lu brought his troops to Ganshi City this time to use all his strength to deal with the allied forces of the 4 countries. Otherwise, He would not be able to maintain his glory and wealth. After Imperial Chancellor Lu brought his troops to Ganshur city, he waited for the arrival of the allied forces of the four countries. Imperial Chancellor Lu was still very confident. The 200,000 troops that he brought along with the 50,000 troops that were originally stationed in Ganshur city, made a total of 250,000. Although the Four-Nation Alliance army had 300,000 soldiers, their spiritual power was generally lower than that of the Jingmu Kingdom army. In addition, Ganshur city was easy to defend and difficult to attack. It was simply wishful thinking for the Four-Nation Alliance army to take over Ganshur city. Moreover, they had lost so many cities previously because of the fight for the throne of the Jingmu Kingdom. Otherwise, the Four-Nation Alliance army would not have won by luck. Soon, the Four-Nation Alliance army arrived outside Ganshur city. However, they did not attack the city immediately. Instead, they camped outside Ganshur city. In the meeting tent of the Four-Country Alliance army, everyone was discussing countermeasures. Your Majesty Fenghua, our morale is high. Why don't we attack the city directly? Emperor Nanxian was in high spirits. He thought that the Jingwood country was great, but in the end they did not even dare to fight. If he had known earlier, he would not have been bullied by them in the past. Yun Chuzhou glanced at him. There are 250,000 Jingwood country troops in Ganshur city. Do you think that we can succeed? Haven't you heard of going all out and failing again? If we are defeated in one attack, our morale will be low. So we have to plan carefully before we can attack the city. Chapter 34:12. Military Order. Emperor Nanxian had been extremely arrogant these days. How could he listen to Yun Chujia's words? He said indignantly, Your Majesty Fenghua, aren't you being too arrogant? You're ruining the spirit of our own people. The Jingmu Kingdom is just a paper tiger. It doesn't have any ability to resist at all. Emperor Shiwen and Emperor Beijing, do you think this is the case? Your Majesty Fenghua, I think what Emperor Nanxian said makes sense. The Jingwood Kingdom is just a facade and doesn't have any fighting strength. We might as well finish the battle as soon as possible so that there won't be any trouble. Emperor Shiwen agreed. Emperor Beijing added, Yes, the new emperor of the Jingwood Kingdom has just ascended the throne, and the throne hasn't been firmly established yet. The army he has mobilized is also a motley crew. We can totally take down Ganshur city in one go. Emperor Shiwen and Emperor Beijing were also a little complacent. They had conquered the other 6 vassal states without much effort. Moreover, ever since they had entered the Jingwood Kingdom, they had been unstoppable. They hadn't encountered any strong resistance at all, so they also felt that Yun Chuzhou was making a mountain out of a molehill. Yun Chuzhou glanced at the 3 of them. Since you insist on attacking the city, just pretend that I didn't say anything just now. However, this siege is no small matter. If it fails, countless lives will be sacrificed. 3 of you, do you dare to issue a military order? Hearing Yun Chujia's provocative words, Emperor Nanxian and the other 2 naturally did not show any weakness. In a muddle-headed manner, they issued a military order. If they could not take down Ganshur city within 3 days, they would listen to Yun Chujia's arrangements in the future. They could not have any more objections. When the 3 of them regained their senses, they had already pressed their hand seals and sealed the jade seals of the 3 kingdoms. It was too late to go back on their words. However, when the 3 of them thought about it, a mere Ganshur city wasn't a problem at all. 3 days were enough. Hence, Emperor Nanxian and the other 2 immediately mobilized their troops and began to attack the city. Prime Minister Sima secretly moved closer to Empress Zhou and asked in a low voice, Your Majesty, what do you think their chances of winning are? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks, there's no chance of winning. Prime Minister Sima. Then why didn't you stop them? After this defeat, we have lost at least tens of thousands of people. Prime Minister Sima said worriedly. Firstly, if I stop them, they will only have a rebellious mentality. They might not listen to me. Secondly, not only them but even the people below them are drifting. If we don't teach them a lesson, they will not learn their lesson. Thirdly, Yun Chuzhou said this. She laughed sinisterly. Prime Minister Sima shivered. Whenever their emperor smiled like this, someone would be in trouble. Yun Chuzhou laughed a few times and continued, thirdly, it is only a matter of time before the Jingwood kingdom is taken down. When that time comes, we will definitely have to redivide the territory. If I don't have something on the three of them, how will I make them bow down to me? Prime Minister Sima was stunned. He silently lit a big red candle for Emperor Nanxian and the other two. Did they want to play tricks with His Majesty? Play them to death without any discussion. On the other side, Emperor Nanxian and the other two were in high spirits. Although a little girl was strong, how strong could she be? At the crucial moment, it was up to them. That night, the four-country alliance army launched an attack. Imperial Chancellor Lu was already prepared. All of a sudden, poison arrows, rolling stones, logs, and talismans were shot out from the city wall. He also learned from Yun Chuzhou and dug out the poison blade trap. Although there was only one layer of poison blade, it caused many casualties among the four-country alliance army. Chapter 34:13. Empress Zhou scolding array Emperor Nanxian, and the other two did not pay much attention to it at the start. How could a siege not kill people? However, seeing that the sky had turned cold and bright, there was still no progress. Furthermore, the defending troops of Ganshur City were getting stronger and stronger. On the other hand, the allied forces of the four countries were already tired after the days of fighting and could not take down the city. Their morale plummeted. Although the hearts of Emperor Nanxian and the other two were beating a little, they still forced the allied forces of the four countries to continue attacking. Within 3 days, the allied forces of the four countries had launched several attacks. More than 30,000 people were killed and injured, but there was no progress at all. Imperial Chancellor Lu was good at buying people's hearts. He gave a speech to the soldiers of the Jingmu Kingdom. The gist of it was to say that the allied forces of the four countries were invaders, and they were protecting the country. They stood at the moral high ground all of a sudden. The morale of the Jingwood Kingdom was unprecedentedly high. Seeing that there was no progress, Emperor Nanxian and the other two had no choice but to come to see Empress Zhou. Empress Zhou glanced at them, but she didn't rub salt on their wounds. Instead, she said lightly, since you have lost, then listen to my arrangements from now on. Go and rest. Emperor Nanxian and the other two walked out of the meeting tent dejectedly. Emperor Nanxian suddenly stopped in his tracks and said, "Eh?" From her tone, why do I feel that we are inferior to her? Emperor Beijing glanced at him. What do you mean by inferior? It's already good that she didn't take the opportunity to make fun of us. Do you want her to say something unpleasant? Let's go back and rest. I haven't slept well for the past 3 days. Let's sleep first. Emperor Nanxian thought that he was right. Perhaps he was overthinking things, so the three of them returned to the tent to rest. Seeing that Emperor Nanxian and the other two had left, Prime Minister Sima asked, Your Majesty, do you have a way to break the city? Yun Chuzhou shook her head. Not at the moment. Let's rest for a day first. I'll go scold the enemy tomorrow. Prime Minister Sima did not continue to ask. His Majesty was not good at other things, but his scolding skills were top-notch. He would just have to watch the show tomorrow. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. The next day, Yun Chuzhou had breakfast and rode the giant rabbit to the front of the camp. Hey, the leader of the opposite side has come out. I have something to say to you. Yun Chuzhou sat on the giant rabbit and said lightly. Soon Imperial Chancellor Lu, who had received the news, stood on the city wall. He saw that it was Yun Chuzhou, and he looked behind her worriedly. Seeing that there was indeed no wild man from the legend, his heart instantly calmed down. He had already sent people to inquire about it. That wild man had left a long time ago. Otherwise, he would really have a headache. Female Emperor Fenghua, what do you have to say? The allied forces of the four countries invaded our Jingmu kingdom for no reason. You are really shameless to the extreme. Imperial Chancellor Lu said righteously. The soldiers of the Jingmu kingdom also joined in the jeering. They were nothing more than scolding the allied forces of the four countries for invading the territories of other countries. They were shameless and so on. The allied forces of the four countries had already been somewhat demoralized after being defeated. When they heard Imperial Chancellor Liu's words, the moral high ground was also occupied by the Jingmu kingdom, and their morale immediately fell even lower. At this moment they heard Yun Chujo chuckle. Yo, I've seen shameless people before, but this is the first time I've seen someone as shameless as you. We invaded your Jingmu kingdom for no reason? What a joke. Not long ago, your Jingmu kingdom sent a letter to our East Phoenix kingdom, asking me, the emperor of a kingdom, to be the former crown prince's side concubine. Isn't this a blatant provocation? However, for the sake of peace and the overall situation, our East Phoenix kingdom did not do anything disrespectful. Moreover, in order to express our sincerity, I personally went to the Jingmu kingdom, and the other 3 emperors accompanied me personally. Yun Chujo paused at this point, and a mocking smile appeared on her face. But what happened next showed me what it means to be treacherous, to rely on the strong to bully the weak, and to be shameless. Chapter 34:14 was even more shameless. Yun Chujia's words immediately attracted everyone's attention. They continued to listen to her. Emperor Muxian broke off the engagement of his own accord in fear that the Divine Phoenix would blame him. The 4 of us immediately left Jing City. Who would have thought that we would be hunted down on the way? The leader was the former crown prince. We were lucky enough to escape into the territory of the East Phoenix Kingdom. However, Emperor Muxian was still unwilling to let us go. He let the former crown prince lead tens of thousands of troops to attack the East Phoenix Kingdom in an attempt to annex the 4 kingdoms. We have been forced to this extent by the Wellwood Kingdom. Are we not allowed to fight back? Do the people of the 4 kingdoms and the 10 vassal kingdoms deserve to be invaded? Yes. When the allied forces of the 4 kingdoms heard Yun Chujia's words, they immediately straightened their backs like the grass that had been dry for a long time was nourished by the rain. They were not invaders, they were just defending themselves. Imperial Chancellor Lu sneered. No matter how glib your tongue is, your 4-nation alliance army is now on the land of our Jingmu country. This confirms that you are invaders. Emperor Nanxian and the other 2 felt their hearts sink. This Imperial Chancellor Lu was indeed difficult to deal with. If he insisted on this point, they really had no reason to defend themselves. At this moment, Yun Chujia's clear voice was heard. Invasion? Imperial Chancellor Lu, who gave you the face to criticize our 4-nation alliance army? You invaded first, so we can only swallow our anger? And then wait for you to recover your strength before you invade us again? We are just preparing for a rainy day. Also, Imperial Chancellor Lu, I remember that your daughter Lu Hanyan is the fiancée of the previous crown prince, right? How come she has become the empress now? You are a petty person who plays by the wind and sells women for glory, yet you have the nerve to compete with me for the moral high ground? Aren't you too shameless? Imperial Chancellor Lu was so angry that his face turned red. Before he could refute, he heard Yun Chujo continue. Moreover, the Jingmu Kingdom and our 10 vassal states are one body, advancing and retreating together, and sharing life and death together. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks, now that the Jingmu Kingdom has been ruined by the imperial family, we have helped you clean up the mess for free. It's fine if you are not grateful, but you actually said that our 4 countries' allied forces are invading? You are too shameless. No one from the Jingmu Kingdom or the 4-nation alliance said anything for a while. They were all shocked by Yun Chujia's shamelessness. However, they obviously underestimated Yun Chujia's shamelessness. She continued, what the higher-ups said are all great principles. Our 4-nation alliance army is the righteous side. In addition, the cultivation world has always respected the strong. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any first-class or third-class countries. Therefore, you don't have to talk to me about invading or not invading. I'll tell you the truth. I have my eyes on the Wellwood Kingdom and want to annex it. What are you going to do about it? Those who don't want to die and want to make a fortune quickly surrender. Otherwise, you will only die. Don't forget, I am the messenger of the Divine Phoenix, the darling of the Tian Dao. What right do you have to fight with me? Also, my empress will be back in a few days. Just you little scumbags, he can easily kill a large number of them. Those who don't want to die, quickly surrender. Imperial Chancellor Lu had a stomach full of words that had been refuted by Yun Chujia's shamelessness. When faced with such a shameless person, any words were useless. The people of the Four Countries Alliance army felt that their Emperor Fenghua was simply too domineering. Only such a woman was worthy to be their king. They had an inexplicable belief that as long as their emperor followed them, he would definitely be invincible and invincible. Chapter 34:15. Crazy boyfriend. The soldiers of the Jingmu kingdom had also suffered a severe blow to their worldview. Previously, they had thought that what Imperial Chancellor Lu had said was very reasonable. They were protecting their country, and they were representing the side of justice. However, after listening to the words of the female emperor of the Zephyr Kingdom, they felt that all of this was the doing of the Jingmu Kingdom, and they had brought this upon themselves. Moreover, he felt that although the spiritual power of the female emperor of Zephyr was a little low, she was much stronger than the Gongzhou emperor, who only knew how to seize the throne. Also, the sudden death of the late emperor might have been caused by the fiancé of the female emperor of Phoenix. He heard that the fiancé of the female emperor of Zephyr was very powerful. It was still fine if he wasn't here. But if he came back, how could they survive? Imperial Chancellor Lu held it in for a long time before he finally said, "There's no point in talking anymore. I'll see you on the battlefield." Yun Chuzhou shrugged nonchalantly. "That sounds nice, but you guys are hiding in Gonshur City like assholes. How are we going to fight to the death? If you have the ability, come out." Imperial Chancellor Lu couldn't figure out Yun Chuzhi's intention at the moment. If she set a trap, he would be walking into a trap if he rashly led his troops to battle. Therefore, he ignored Yun Chuzhi's provocation and left the city wall. Yun Chuzhou curled her lips and said to Emperor Nanxian and the other two, "Pick a sharp-tongued and loud-mouthed one and scold me non-stop." Emperor Nanxian and the other two obviously had not recovered from Yun Chuzhi's shameless words. They nodded blankly. After Yun Chuzhou returned to the meeting tent, she held her chin and thought about how to take over Gonshur City. Fighting head-on was definitely not going to work. In terms of strength, they could not beat the Jingmu army. Luckily, Imperial Chancellor Lu was too cautious. Otherwise, if he brought his troops out to fight, the Four-Country Alliance army might be defeated. The reason why she had people curse was to create confusion so that Imperial Chancellor Lu would not come back to his senses and bring his troops out to fight. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Yun Chuzhou gathered Emperor Nanxian and the others to discuss. After a day of discussion, they could not come up with any good ideas, so Yun Chuzhou had no choice but to dismiss them. This fellow washed up briefly in the evening and lay in the tent. After pondering for a long time, he did not make any progress. He rubbed his chin. Forget it. Since he had nothing to do anyway, he could chat with Empress D. This fellow took out a voice transmission talisman and sent a few messages to D. Biming. It was nothing more than to tell him about the recent situation, telling him to be careful of Yun Yun. This fellow was shrewd. From time to time, his boyfriend would have to swear an oath of sovereignty, so that those flirtatious bitches would not have a chance to take advantage of him. Even if D. Biming had sealed his 7 emotions and 6 desires, it was still better to tease him a little when he had nothing to do. Teasing him a little would hurt his body, but teasing him a little would bring him pleasure. Cough cough. To be honest, Yun Chuzhou did not expect D. Biming to be able to reply. After all, today was different from the past. He was a cold-hearted master. Who would have thought that after a while, the voice transmission talisman actually started to vibrate? Yun Chuzhou could not wait to send her divine sense in. D. Biming's emotionless voice came from within. Get to the point. Yun Chuzhou was stunned for a moment before she reacted. D. Biming meant that she had rambled on and on. What did he want to say? Yun Chuzhou gritted her teeth and squeezed out a sentence, "It's okay, my balls hurt." Very soon, Yun Chuzhou received another reply from D. Biming. 1. You don't have any eggs. 2. Don't waste the voice transmission talisman. Yun Chuzhou. Her boyfriend turned into a psychopath. Why did he break? Chapter 34:16 Poisonous mushrooms. Yun Chuzhou angrily kept the sound transmission talisman and thought to herself, "Pretty boy. I'm not afraid to settle the score. Well, just wait and see." In the next few days, the Four-Country Alliance army sent people to scold them, But the Jingmu country did not have any reaction. Yun Chujo asked the four-country alliance army to dig some traps, but Emperor Nanxian and the other two did not think much of it. The Jingmu country army obviously would not come out to fight, so what was the use of digging or not? Yun Chujo glanced at the three of them. This is called being prepared. If the Jingmu army really comes out, are you sure you can win? Emperor Nanxian and the other two did not say anything. They had been really arrogant a few days ago, and after being defeated they had become much more obedient. Yun Chujo was actually really anxious. If this continued, the longer it dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for the four-country alliance army. They needed to think of a way to break through the city as soon as possible. Fortune does not come in pairs and misfortune does not come in pairs. Just as Yun Chujo was worried about attacking the city, people in the army were poisoned one after another. Some vomited, some had diarrhea, and some had hallucinations. Luckily, as they discovered it early, no one lost their lives because of this. When Yun Chujo received the report, her heart tightened. Could it be that a spy had poisoned their food? After a careful investigation, she found out that there was a dense forest not far from where the army was stationed, and there were many mushrooms growing inside. The soldiers in charge of food wanted to improve their food, so they picked a lot of mushrooms and stewed them with the chicken. They did not expect that there might be some poisonous mushrooms mixed in, which caused this small accident. After hearing the reason, Emperor Nanxian said angrily, "They are simply looking for trouble. They don't lack food, so why pick mushrooms when they have nothing to do?" Emperor Shiwen echoed, "That's right, we must punish those cooks. If we hadn't found them earlier, and if the soldiers were poisoned on a large scale, how terrible would it be? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." Thanks, Emperor Beijing sighed. It would be great if the people guarding the city ate these poisonous mushrooms. It would be much easier for us to attack the city. What did you say? Empress Zhou asked as she stared at Emperor Beijing with sparkling eyes. Emperor Beijing was a little scared by Yun Chujia's stare. He stuttered, I said, how great it would be if these poisonous mushrooms were eaten by the people of the Jingmu kingdom. Yun Chujia's heart skipped a beat. She remembered that in the psychedelic forest, she had said that she wanted to eat poisonous mushrooms. Xiao Mogu had summoned a large number of poisonous mushrooms. Xiao Mogu should be able to attract those poisonous mushrooms. However, she didn't know if she could command those poisonous mushrooms. Emperor Beijing and the other two couldn't help but look dumbfounded when they saw Yun Chujo standing there with a silly smile on her face. Was this girl stupid? Yun Chujo came back to her senses and said, "Let's go and take a look at that dense forest." Emperor Nanxian and the other two didn't understand. What were they going to look at in that dense forest? Could it be that this girl was also craving for stewed chicken and mushrooms? Wasn't she afraid of being poisoned to death? Although the three of them were filled with suspicion, they still followed Empress Zhou to that dense forest. The area of this dense forest wasn't small, and it extended all the way to the valley in the distance. The deeper they went, the thicker the fog became. Furthermore, the deeper they went, the more mushrooms there were. Your Majesty Fenghua, you can't go any further in. The mushrooms in there can emit poisonous gas. If you're not careful, your life might be in danger, Prime Minister Sima advised from the side. Yun Chujo waved her hand and said, "You guys stay here. I'll go in and take a look. I'll be back soon." Before the crowd could react, Yun Chujo had already jumped far away. Chapter 34:17. The mushroom had become a spirit. Prime Minister Sima's head was buzzing. Their emperor was good in every way, but he was too bold. It was filled with poisonous mushrooms. Wasn't she afraid of being poisoned to death? Yun Chujo walked forward for some distance. The strange grass in her dantian began to clamor for the poisonous mushrooms. Yun Chujo scolded, "Shut up. These poisonous mushrooms are very useful. They are not for you to eat." After Yun Chujo finished scolding the strange grass, she asked Xiao Mogu in the spirit beast bag, "Xiao Mogu, can you attract these mushrooms or command these mushrooms?" "I can attract and command them, but at the moment, I can only attract and command the mushrooms within 100 li." Xiao Mogu answered with slight excitement. Was Master going to let it show its skills? Yun Chujo rolled her eyes and pondered for a moment before giving Xiao Mogu a few instructions. Xiao Mogu readily agreed. Yun Chujo immediately released Xiao Mogu and turned around to return. When Prime Minister Sima and the others saw that Yun Chujo was safe and sound, they finally felt relieved. Yun Chujo held 100 spirit mushroom in her hand behind her back and said with a smile, "I thought there would be something like this in here. As expected, I found a few. Let's go, I'll stew some chickens for you when we get back." Prime Minister Sima almost wanted to kneel before His Majesty. "His Majesty, please be more careful. At this time you still want to stew some chickens and mushrooms?" Emperor Nanxian and the other two also curled their lips. This girl was still too young, and she would go crazy from time to time. After everyone returned to the base, Yun Chujo did indeed get someone to stew the mushrooms with chicken meat, and then eat a big meal. The next morning before Yun Chujo woke up, she heard Emperor Nanxian shouting outside the tent, "Emperor Fenghua, come out and take a look. The mushrooms have turned into spirits. The walls of Ganshur City are covered with poisonous mushrooms. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." Thanks. Although Yun Chujo was well aware, she still pretended to be surprised and followed Emperor Nanxian and the others to the front of the camp to take a look. Although Yun Chujo was mentally prepared, she was still shocked when she saw the scene in front of her. The city walls of Ganshur City were covered with colorful poisonous mushrooms. The soldiers of the Jingmu Kingdom were using all kinds of methods to get rid of those poisonous mushrooms. Even so, the poisonous mushrooms were still spreading. Yun Chujo stretched her neck and shouted, "Oh my! How is it? You will die if you don't do justice. These poisonous mushrooms are a warning from the heavens. Your Jingmu Kingdom's fate is over. Quickly surrender. If you do anything wrong again, I'm afraid it won't be as simple as the poisonous mushrooms. Someone might die." The Jingmu Kingdom soldiers were already panicking when they saw this strange situation. Now that they heard Yun Chujio's words, they became even more nervous. Was it really a warning from the Tiandao? Perhaps it was true. Otherwise, why would these poisonous mushrooms grow on the city wall? This didn't make sense at all. Didn't mushrooms grow in the forest and grass? No matter how bad it was still a dark and damp place. Why would they grow on the city wall? Moreover, these were all poisonous mushrooms without exception. This was definitely not a good sign. Imperial Chancellor Lu saw that the morale of the army was wavering. He was so angry that he gritted his teeth. What on earth was going on with these damn poisonous mushrooms? The only thing that comforted him was that fortunately, these poisonous mushrooms could not emit poisonous gas. As long as they were not eaten, they would be fine. However, it was obvious that he was happy too early. Soldiers began to die one after another. For a moment, everyone was in a panic. Chapter 34:18. The city is broken. As the number of people dying suddenly increased, the panic in Ganshur City spread. Imperial Chancellor Lu was anxious and scared. He finally found out the cause of the sudden deaths. It turned out that some poisonous mushrooms had grown on the walls of some wells in the city. These poisonous mushrooms were much more poisonous than the ones on the city walls. They would naturally lose their lives if they drank this kind of well water. Upon hearing this explanation, the people of the Jingmu Kingdom did not let go of their worries. Instead, they became even more panicked. This was clearly a warning from the heavens. Otherwise, why would there be poisonous mushrooms in the well? This was only the beginning. Very soon, someone woke up with a poisonous mushroom growing on top of his head. He was so frightened that his soul almost left his body. Empress Jo naturally wouldn't waste such a good opportunity. 2 days later at night, she gave the order to attack the city. Empress Jo was behind them. She shouted loudly with her spiritual power, "People of the Jingmu Kingdom, listen up. The only way to save your lives is to surrender. Otherwise, you will become fodder for the poisonous mushrooms. Surrender. If you surrender, you will have a good life. Besides, who is the emperor has nothing to do with you. As long as the war is over, you will be able to cultivate properly. Isn't it better than being on tenterhooks now? If anyone opens the city gate, I will reward him with 1,000,000 upper-grade spiritual stones. The soldiers of the Jingmu kingdom were already in a state of panic. After hearing Yun Chujia's words, they lost the will to resist even more. Finally, someone couldn't resist the temptation of the bounty. He opened the city gate, and the allied forces of the four kingdoms charged in. What happened next was exceptionally smooth. Except for some of Imperial Chancellor Liu's direct subordinates who protected Imperial Chancellor Liu and escaped, the rest surrendered. Strangely enough, when the sun rose the next day, both the poisonous mushrooms on the city walls and the poisonous mushrooms elsewhere had disappeared. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks this time, not only did the people of the Jingmu kingdom believe that this was heaven's punishment, but the allied forces of the four kingdoms also believed it. They became more confident that they were on the side of justice, and they even felt more energetic walking. Emperor Nanxian and the other two muttered in private, thinking that this matter had something to do with that girl. After all, she had entered the depths of the forest once, and the next day, many poisonous mushrooms appeared in Gonshir City. However, how did she do it? The three of them guessed that it was most likely the work of the Divine Phoenix. That girl was the messenger of the Divine Phoenix, and she might know some secret techniques. After the three of them figured it out, they became even more fearful of Yun Chujio. As they had taken in more than 100,000 troops from the Jingmu kingdom, the allied forces of the four countries were unstoppable, and they quickly arrived outside of Jing City. Imperial Chancellor Liu and the royal guards lasted for less than 2 days before the four countries' allied forces broke through the city gate. In the end, Emperor Gongzhou and the others were trapped in the royal palace. Imperial Chancellor Liu knew that the situation was hopeless. The only thing he could do now was to save his life. Therefore, he took advantage of Emperor Gongzhou's unprepared state to kill him. Seeing this, Lu Hanyan couldn't help but turn pale with fright. "Father, what are you doing?" Imperial Chancellor Liu took out a jade seal from Emperor Gongzhou's storage ring and said viciously, "No poison, no husband. Now that the Imperial Jade Seal is in our hands, this is the treasure that can save our lives." "Father, can this thing save our lives?" "Only those who have the Imperial Jade Seal can be the rightful emperor. Whether it's the female emperor of Fenghua or the other three, they must all want this Imperial Jade Seal. Let's use this Imperial Jade Seal to fight for our lives. Perhaps we can even have a bright future," Imperial Chancellor Liu said sinisterly. Chapter 34-19 Imperial Decree. Lu Hanyan said with admiration, "Father, are you trying to drive a wedge between the four of them?" Imperial Chancellor Liu nodded. "That's right. We can go through thick and thin together, but we can't go through thick and thin together. Now that the Jingmu kingdom has been taken over by them, they must have selfish motives in order to divide the sphere of influence. I will use the Imperial Decree as a bargaining chip." "Father, your plan is very good. But you'd better not let that bitch succeed. Otherwise, she will definitely not let us off," Lu Hanyan said viciously. "Of course, no matter who among Emperor Nanxian and the other two finally gets the Imperial Jade Seal, Father will let them take you as their concubine. With your skills, the position of Empress will be yours sooner or later." As soon as the father and daughter finished their discussion, the Imperial Palace was taken over. Yun Chujio, Emperor Nanxian, and the others rushed to the throne room. Imperial Chancellor Liu held the Imperial Jade Seal high in his hand. He said loudly, "All of you don't move. If anyone comes any closer, I will self-detonate my Dantian and destroy this Imperial Jade Seal. In that case, none of you will be able to be the rightful emperor of the Jingmu kingdom." Emperor Nanxian and the other two immediately waved their hands and ordered the soldiers behind them to stop moving forward. Then they looked at Empress Zhou and said, "Your Majesty Fenghua, this Imperial Jade Seal is not a small matter. What do you think we should do?" Empress Zhou smiled faintly and asked Imperial Chancellor Liu, "What do you want in exchange for this Imperial Jade Seal?" Seeing that everyone had stopped moving, Imperial Chancellor Liu looked pleased with himself and said loudly, "A kingdom cannot be without a ruler for a day. Which of the four of you wants to be the ruler of the Jingmu kingdom? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Emperor Nanxian and the other two men were naturally envious of the position of the ruler of the Jingmu kingdom. Although they had agreed in advance that they would reclassify their sphere of influence, the spiritual energy and properties of the Jingmu kingdom were much stronger than those of the 10 vassal kingdoms. They would rather have the Jingmu kingdom than the 10 vassal states. However, although the three of them had ulterior motives, none of them dared to say it out loud. After all, they were all wary of each other right now, so none of them could break the balance first. When Imperial Chancellor Lu saw the expressions on the faces of Emperor Nanxian and the other two, he immediately understood what they were thinking. In his heart, he had a greater chance of success in his plan. He continued, "How about this? If any of your majesty can promise to take us in, I will present the imperial jade seal to him, and assist him in familiarizing himself with the various affairs of the Jingmu kingdom as soon as possible." Emperor Nanxian and the other two exchanged a glance, then looked at Yun Chujio, who had a faint smile on her face. They were hesitant in their hearts. Should they shed all pretense of cordiality or not? Just as the three of them were hesitating, they heard Yun Chujio say calmly, "Old thief Lu, you are really cunning. Are you trying to drive a wedge between the 4 countries? If the 4 countries fall apart and the other second-tier countries take the opportunity to enter, wouldn't we all die? You are really ruthless." Hearing Yun Chujio's words, Emperor Nanxian and the other two felt a chill in their hearts. Yes, the Jingmu kingdom was destroyed, but there were still other second-tier countries. If they rebelled, they would probably be destroyed by the other second-tier kingdoms very soon. Imperial Chancellor Lu was really vicious. Imperial Chancellor Lu did not expect that his plan would be so easily destroyed by Yun Chujio. He gritted his teeth. "All right, I'll take a step back. As long as you let us father and daughter live, I'll give you the imperial jade seal. Otherwise, I'd rather self-destruct than let you be the rightful emperor of the Jingwood kingdom." Emperor Nanxian said weakly, "Emperor Fenghua, why don't we let them go? If we don't have the imperial jade seal, we won't be able to answer to the people of the Jingmu kingdom." Chapter 34-20. The imperial jade seal carved by the big carrot. Emperor Shiwen and Emperor Beijing echoed. Yes, it's a small matter whether the father and daughter are alive or dead, but the imperial jade seal is a big matter. Empress Zhou smiled faintly. "I have never been threatened by others. Do you think a mere imperial jade seal can threaten me? What nonsense imperial jade seal? It's just a stone. As long as I hold great power, I can even pick up a pebble by the river and use it as the imperial jade seal. If you want to destroy it, then destroy it." Imperial Chancellor Lu was dumbstruck when he heard that. However, on second thought, this Empress Zephyr must be lying to him. He couldn't be fooled. "Hence," he said, "what you say is easy. I don't believe it. If you don't have the imperial jade seal, how are you going to convince the masses?" Yun Chujio spread her hands and pointed at Prime Minister Sima beside her. "Tell everyone." Prime Minister Sima. Why would such a shameful matter always fall on him? However, he did not dare to disobey Yun Chujio's orders. He could only thicken his skin and say, "My emperor is right. The imperial jade seal is just a stone." When His Majesty ascended the throne, the imperial jade seal was stolen by the previous crown prince. His Majesty simply used a radish to carve the imperial jade seal, and then changed it to a 1,000-year-old cold jade material. Everyone, "Holy shit! How could this be? The imperial jade seal carved by a big radish? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." Thanks. Yun Chujio looked at the dumbfounded crowd. She smiled faintly and said, "Although the imperial jade seal is a symbol of imperial power, I am the supreme imperial power. If I say it is the imperial jade seal, it is the imperial jade seal. If I say it is worthless, it is worthless. Go kill him. That piece of broken stone will be buried with him." Hearing Yun Chujio's words, the people behind him immediately rushed forward. Imperial Chancellor Lu and his daughter were no match for them. Although Imperial Chancellor Lu said that he would self-destruct his Dantian, he was very afraid of death and would not really self-destruct. In the end, he was killed by the people. The soldier who received the imperial jade seal respectfully presented the imperial jade seal to Empress Zhou. Empress Zhou washed it with water in disgust, and then put it into her storage ring very naturally. Only then did Emperor Nanxian and the other two realize that the people who had rushed into the palace behind them were all direct descendants of the East Phoenix Kingdom. They immediately had a bad feeling. Emperor Nanxian gathered his courage and said, "Your Majesty Fenghua, since there is nothing else, we will return to the tent first. We will discuss the redivision of the kingdom tomorrow." Emperor Shiwen and Emperor Beijing also agreed. They felt that if they stayed any longer, they would not have a good ending. This person was even capable of using a big carrot as a jade seal. He would definitely be able to betray them easily. If they did not leave now, they might not be able to save their old lives. Empress Zhou laughed crisply. "Your Majesties, why do I feel that you are a little afraid? What are you afraid of? Are you afraid that I will betray you and kill you?" When Emperor Nanxian heard Yun Chujia's words, he felt a chill in his heart. It was over. What he was afraid of came true. This wretched girl was definitely going to kill him. Empress Zhou laughed a few more times. When Emperor Nanxian and the other two heard her laughter, it was like a life-threatening talisman. They could not help but move towards the door of the main hall. "Your Majesties, you are overthinking. Since I have signed an alliance with the three of you, I will naturally keep my promise. How about this? We will not take any of the 6 vassal states that we have conquered. You can split them into 2. How about it? I am generous enough, right?" Yun Chuzhou said with a smile. Chapter 34:20 will give you 8 reasons Emperor Nanxian and the other two almost vomited blood. Generous? You are obviously trying to monopolize the Jingmu kingdom. You are just giving them 2 lousy vassal kingdoms and sending them away? Can you not be so shameless? Emperor Nanxian and the other two were so angry that they could not care less about their fear. Emperor Nanxian angrily questioned, "Your Majesty Fenghua, what do you mean by this? Do you want to monopolize the Jingmu kingdom?" Yun Chuzhou nodded. "That's right." Emperor Nanxian originally thought that Yun Chuzhou would give it a try, but who would have thought that she would shamelessly admit it? For a moment he did not know what to say. Emperor Shiwen said from the side, "Your Majesty Fenghua, back then, we agreed to split it equally. How could you do this? You are betraying us by doing this." Yun Chuzhou shrugged. "Take a good look at our 4 countries alliance agreement. It clearly states that we will divide the territories equally after we take over the vassal states. Our East Phoenix Kingdom has already given up on splitting the vassal states equally with you. What else are you not satisfied with? Don't tell me that you still want to give us a vassal state?" Emperor Nanxian and the other two were stunned. They took out the 4 countries alliance agreement and read it word by word. What the fuck? It only said that they would divide the territory equally, but it didn't mention the scope of the territory equally. Had they been kicked in the head by a donkey? Emperor Nanxian was so angry that his old face turned red. "Your Majesty Fenghua, you are playing with words. You know very well that we are going to divide all the territory equally. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." "Thanks, that's right, Your Majesty Fenghua, you can't go too far. We could have just stood by and watched, but we helped you take care of the Jingwood Kingdom. It's too unfair of you to kill the donkey now." Emperor Shiwen was also very angry. Emperor Beijing didn't say anything because, well, he was so angry that he couldn't speak. Yun Chuzhou still had a faint smile on her face. "The 3 of you, you must understand a few things. First, you could have just stood by and watched, but the Jingmu Kingdom annexed our East Phoenix Kingdom, and they will annex the 3 kingdoms of yours next. You helped me to protect yourself, so don't speak so righteously. Second, you clearly have some misunderstanding about the meaning of kill the donkey and grind the mill. If I wanted to kill the donkey and grind the mill, I wouldn't have divided the vassal kingdom to you. Instead, I would have killed you and annexed your 3 kingdoms. Do you think that I don't have the strength now? Third, ask yourselves, in this war, have you contributed more than my East Phoenix Kingdom? Have you suffered more losses than my East Phoenix Kingdom? Fourth, the Wellwood Kingdom borders my East Phoenix Kingdom. If it is divided to you, how will you manage it? Do you want me to divide the East Phoenix Kingdom to you? Fifth, if our 4 kingdoms divide their strength evenly, it won't be long before we become suspicious of each other. Then we will quickly turn against each other. The final result will definitely be the annexation of other second-class kingdoms. Do you want to see such a scene? Sixthly, are any of the three of you confident that you can make the original subjects of the Jingmu kingdom submit? I can do it. Seventhly, you have signed a military order before. From now on, you will listen to me in everything. Are you going to break the contract? Eighthly, I will not treat you unfairly. Although I can only give each of you 2 vassal states now, as my territory expands in the future, you will get more and more benefits. What is a mere second-class country? In the future, I will let you be the rulers of a first-class country. Finally, if the above 8 rules still cannot convince you, then don't blame me for being ruthless. I can only kill you. If you want to live or die, choose for yourself. Chapter 34-22. Emperor Nanxian's plea for help. Emperor Nanxian and the other 2 were so angry that they were twitching. What choice did they have? Did they have a choice? This girl was both soft and hard, and she spoke in all the right ways. How could they not agree? The 3 of them looked at each other and said sadly, "Then let's do as Emperor Fenghua says. We have no objections." That's great. Your Majesty, please stay here and wait for me to ascend the throne before returning. Let me do my best as a host. Yun Chuzhou said with a smile. What else could Emperor Nanxian and the other 2 say? They could only nod their heads and agree. They had no choice but to agree. Yun Chuzhou knew how to give a sweet slap. After plundering the national treasury of the Jingmu kingdom, she took out a portion and gave it to Emperor Nanxian and the other 2. Emperor Nanxian and the other 2 were so touched that they burst into tears. They didn't expect this little girl to still have a conscience. They had finally seen the money they needed to turn back. Everything proceeded in an orderly manner. 3 days later, Empress Zhou officially ascended the throne. This fellow was very lazy and didn't want to think about any new titles. He still claimed to be the peerless and peerless female emperor, or simply the female emperor. Naturally, the name of the Jingmu kingdom couldn't be used anymore, so it was changed to Dongfeng Kingdom. The change of the dynasty was actually for ordinary people. As long as it didn't involve their own interests, no one would care about it. Therefore, Empress Zhou issued a few imperial edicts to reduce taxes, which immediately won praise from the entire country. Most of the original ministers of the Jingmu kingdom were restored to their original positions. Other than the emperor who had changed, the rest were no different from before. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Empress Zhou was eating and drinking in the palace that day when she received Emperor Nanxian's voice transmission talisman. Your Majesty Fenghua, you must help me. I really don't have a way to live. Emperor Nanxian cried. Yun Chuzhou was shocked. What was wrong with this Emperor Nanxian? Yun Chuzhou received a few more voice transmission talismans from Emperor Nanxian, and then she understood what had happened. It turned out that the national advisor of the Southern Dragon Kingdom, Jishun, was greedy and lustful. He usually asked Emperor Nanxian to offer some beautiful girls to serve the divine dragon. Emperor Nanxian also turned a blind eye to this. However, he never expected that Jishun's actions were getting more and more arrogant, and he actually had designs on the 7th princess, who was Emperor Nanxian's favorite. If Jishun was as reliable as Yuan Ji, the national advisor of the East Phoenix Kingdom, Emperor Nanxian would definitely happily send his daughter over. However, all the girls who were sent to Jishun would soon die. How could he bear to let his daughter lose her life? Moreover, the people of the South Dragon Kingdom had long been complaining about this. Emperor Nanxian was also forced into a corner, so he asked Yun Chuzhou for help. Yun Chuzhou blinked her eyes. The monarchs of various countries did not have any channels of contact with the Lihan Palace. At least, the monarchs of second and third class countries did not have this right. Therefore, the state preceptor of each country could be said to be very glorious. No one dared to offend them. Yun Chuzhou rested her chin on her hand and thought for a moment. Then, she took out the voice transmission talisman of the imperial advisor of the East Phoenix Kingdom, Yuan Ji, and prepared to ask him some questions. The reason why Yun Chuzhou chose to ask the imperial advisor of the East Phoenix Kingdom, Yuan Ji, and not the imperial advisor of the Jingmu Kingdom, Shi Lu, was because Yun Chuzhou had once gone to the Divine Hall to visit Shirlu, but he had rejected her on the grounds that she was in closed-door cultivation. Therefore, Yun Chuzhou didn't figure out his methods and didn't plan to have any further contact with him. She only sent people to monitor the movements of the Divine Hall. Although Yun Chuzhou didn't trust and have a good impression of the state preceptor of the East Phoenix Kingdom, Yuanji, she was still slightly better than the other state preceptor. Chapter 34-23 Patrolling the Southern Dragon Kingdom. This fellow went straight to the point and directly told him about the matter of the state preceptor of the Southern Dragon Kingdom, asking him if he had any way to report this unscrupulous state preceptor to the Lihen Palace. Yuanji replied very quickly. The gist of it was that once the state preceptor was appointed, unless the Lihen Palace voluntarily withdrew, he would be the state preceptor of that kingdom until his death. Moreover, the monarch of a country below second-class country did not have the right to speak directly to the Lihen Palace. When Yun Chuzhou heard the reply, she could not help but sneer. Wasn't this just letting the imperial tutors of various countries do whatever they wanted? She asked again, is there no other way to change the imperial tutor? After a while, Yuanji replied, unless the divine beast that the imperial tutor is guarding shows its spirit and banishes it, there is no other way to change the imperial tutor. Before Yun Chuzhou could digest the meaning behind Yuanji's words, she received another voice transmission talisman from Yuanji. Your Majesty Fenghua, retreat now. Don't get yourself into trouble. Yun Chuzhou was taken aback. This Yuanji was rather interesting. She only replied to Yuanji with 2 words, thank you. Yun Chuzhou put away the voice transmission talisman and wondered if she should intervene in this matter. She was still in her fledgling years. If she offended the Li Hate Palace, she would definitely not have a good ending. However, if she did not care about Emperor Nanxian's life and death first, it would cause a chill in Emperor Shiwen and Emperor Beijing's hearts. Second, that Jishin had already aroused the anger of the people. If she did not get rid of him, there would be problems sooner or later. She had heard that the 2 state preceptor of the Shiwu Kingdom and the Beixian Kingdom were also very unreasonable. If she allowed them to continue, they would sooner or later become a disaster. Moreover, the person she hated the most in her life was the one who abused women. That Jishin deserved to die. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. After this period of understanding, she felt that the reason why the Lihen Palace had sent the imperial advisors to monitor the various countries and not directly annex them was because they were afraid of them. That was why they would not easily interfere in the affairs of the various countries. As long as she did things properly and did not let the Lihen Palace find any evidence, the Lihen Palace should not openly make things difficult for her. Hence, Yun Chuzhou took out a voice transmission talisman and replied to Emperor Nanxian, I will be touring your 3 kingdoms in the next few days. I will start with your Southern Dragon Kingdom, and prepare to receive you. After receiving Yun Chuzhi's voice transmission talisman, Emperor Nanxian naturally understood Yun Chuzhi's subtext. Although he did not have much hope, when he thought about how that little girl was full of bad intentions, he thought that she might really have a way to save his daughter. He immediately began to prepare eagerly. As for Jishan's side, he naturally used the method of delaying. No matter what, he had to hold on until that little girl arrived. After Yun Chuzhou announced the news that she was going to patrol the 3 countries of the South Dragon Kingdom, everyone did not have any objections. To be exact, they did not dare to have any objections. Female Emperor of Zephyr was ruthless and merciless. She would not go back on her words. If she did not agree with a single word, she would carry a large kitchen knife and slash people. Who the fuck would dare to have objections? Yun Chuzhou brought along many elite guards and also Prime Minister Sima. To be honest, Prime Minister Sima really didn't want to go with this ancestor because this ancestor was too good at causing trouble. He could already foresee that he would encounter a lot of trouble on this trip. A few days later, Empress Zhou arrived at the capital of the Southern Dragon Kingdom and was naturally warmly welcomed. After some red tape, Emperor Nanxian finally had a chance to be alone with Empress Zhou. Emperor Nanxian said with tears streaming down his face, Your Majesty Fenghua, I have been too cowardly as an emperor. Jishin was getting more and more outrageous. It was one thing for him to take credit cards, but now he actually had designs on my daughter. He was really going too far. You must help me make a decision. Chapter 34-24. Divine Hall of the Southern Dragon Kingdom. Yunchujo picked up the teacup on the table and sipped on the tea without saying a word. Emperor Nanxian could not help but feel a little confused. Wasn't this little girl here to support him? Why didn't she say anything? Emperor Nanxian licked his old face and continued, Your Majesty Fenghua, you have always been resourceful. Do you have any good ideas? Yunchujo put down her teacup and glanced at him. Your Majesty Nanxian, that imperial tutor Jishan, is a member of the Lihen Palace. What can I do? You think too highly of me. Emperor Nanxian almost vomited blood, but he had a favor to ask. He could only smile and say, Your Majesty Fenghua, you are extremely talented. You will definitely have a way. As long as you can help me get rid of that Jishan, I will agree to whatever conditions you ask. Yunchujo curled her lips slightly. Your Majesty Nanxian, your words are too polite. We will advance and retreat together. We will share honor and disgrace together. What conditions do we need? Before Emperor Nanxian could express his gratitude, he heard Yunchujo continue, You really agree to whatever terms? Emperor Nanxian. He decided to feed his gratitude to the dogs. Yunchujo saw Emperor Nanxian's dumbfounded expression. She could not help but smile brightly. I was just joking with you. However, no matter what we do, we will most likely offend the Lihen Palace. I am bringing trouble upon myself. If the Lihen Palace makes things difficult for me in the future, Emperor Nanxian will not stand by and do nothing, right? Emperor Nanxian was not a fool. He naturally understood the hidden meaning behind Yunchuji's words. He had long figured out that if he were to play tricks, he and the other two would not be a match for this girl even if they were tied together. Since that was the case, there was no need to go against her. Moreover, he was more or less touched that Yunchujo could come and help him deal with Jishan this time. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks hence, Emperor Nanxian said. Your Majesty Fenghua, don't worry. In the future, our Southern Dragon Kingdom will definitely follow your lead and listen to your arrangements. Yunchujo curled the corners of her lips. That's good. I believe that Your Majesty Nanxian is not a person who goes back on his words. Tomorrow morning bring me to the Divine Hall. I will go and meet that Jishan. Only then did Emperor Nanxian heave a sigh of relief in his heart. He hoped that this little girl would not disappoint him, and would be able to think of a way to deal with Jishan. Otherwise, not only would he lose his daughter, he would also incur the wrath of the people sooner or later. His throne would also be in danger. The next morning after breakfast, Emperor Nanxian accompanied Yunchujo outside the Divine Hall. After the servants of the Divine Hall reported the situation, they welcomed Emperor Nanxian, Yunchujo, and the others inside. Yunchujo sized up the Divine Halls as she walked. The Divine Halls of the Southern Dragon Kingdom were basically the same as the Divine Halls of the East Phoenix Kingdom, as if they were replicas. Her heart stirred slightly. Could it be that these Divine Halls were all built by the Lihate Palace? In that case, what method did the Lihate Palace use to suppress so many ancient divine beasts? Just as Yunchujo was pondering, she felt an uncomfortable gaze. She followed the gaze and saw a middle-aged man dressed in the Imperial Preceptor's uniform sizing her up wantonly. Imperial Preceptor. This is His Majesty Fenghua of the Eastern Phoenix Kingdom. His Majesty Fenghua is touring the three kingdoms and wishes to pay his respects to the Divine Dragon. Please make it easy for him, Emperor Nanxian said politely to Jishan, even with a hint of humility. Jishan's gaze fell on Yunchuji's beautiful face, and he said with a fake smile, Since His Majesty Fenghua is in such a good mood, it is naturally possible. However, His Majesty Nanxian, you are busy with national affairs, so there is no need for you to accompany him here. Just let my imperial tutor accompany His Majesty Fenghua to pay his respects. Chapter 3425. Had she forgotten about the Empress? Emperor Nanxian was stunned at first, but when he saw the way Jishan stared at Yun Chuzhou, his heart felt like it was going to explode. Was Jishan planning to take advantage of this girl? The first thought that came to Emperor Nanxian's mind was he fucking tired of living? Even if Emperor Nanxian knew that Jishan was a member of the Li Hate Palace, even if he knew that Yun Chuzhou would not easily become enemies with the Li Hate Palace, he had an inexplicable feeling that a black-hearted person like Yun Chuzhou would definitely not spare Jishan. While Emperor Nanxian was somewhat worried, there was actually a strange sense of excitement. At first, he was worried that Yun Chuzhou would brush him off and would not do her best. But now there was no need to worry at all. Even if she did not want to help him, this Jishan was seeking his own death. She would definitely think of a way to deal with him. It had to be said that this Jishan had done a good job. Naturally, Emperor Nanxian did not want to leave just like that. He looked at Yun Chuzhou and asked for her opinion. Yun Chuzhou curled the corner of her lips and said indifferently, "Your Majesty Nanxian, since you are busy with national affairs, you don't have to accompany me. It will be fine as long as National Advisor Jishan is with me." Yun Chuzhou then looked at Prime Minister Sima and the others who were following behind her. "You can also follow His Majesty Nanxian and leave. Just wait for me outside the Divine Hall." Prime Minister Sima's head was buzzing. He knew that His Majesty was a troublemaker. What was she going to do now? It was obvious that Jishan was up to no good. She actually wanted to be alone with him. Had she forgotten about the Empress? Jishan was rather satisfied. He thought to himself, could it be that this Empress Fenghua also had feelings for him? Otherwise, why did she send her subordinates away? Emperor Nanxian exchanged a few more pleasantries before leaving with Prime Minister Sima and the others. Jishan sent his subordinates away as well. Then, he said with a malicious expression, "I've long heard that Her Majesty is very beautiful. She really lives up to her reputation today. Why don't we go to the room to drink tea first, and then pay respects to the Divine Dragon? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." Thanks. Yun Chuzhou still had a faint smile on her face. "State Preceptor, you're in a good mood. However, let's pay respects to the Divine Dragon first." Jishan thought to himself that this female emperor of Zephyr Nation wouldn't be able to escape from her grasp today anyway, so there was nothing much for him to do. Although her status as the monarch of a second-tier country was somewhat troublesome, she had no way of interacting with the Lihen Palace. Even if he took advantage of her, she could only suffer in silence. The more Jishan thought about it, the more pleased he became. Soon he brought Yun Chuzhou to the Divine Hall Square. The square of the Divine Hall was no different from the square of the East Phoenix Kingdom. In front of them was still the 9-story altar. Yun Chuzhou's eyes flashed. "State Preceptor Jishan, let's begin the ceremony." Jishan's mind was not on this, so he gave a few perfunctory greetings. Yun Chuzhou looked at the altar with burning eyes. If the remnant soul of the Divine Dragon was suppressed here, things would be much easier. If there was no remnant soul of the Dragon God here, then she could only pretend to be a ghost. Anyway, this was her strong point, so she could just act it out. Thinking of this, Yun Chuzhou lifted her leg and walked towards the altar. Jishan did not expect Yun Chuzhou to make such a move. When he wanted to stop her, Yun Chuzhou had already climbed onto the first layer of the altar. He was obviously worried and did not go forward to stop her. Instead, he said anxiously, "Emperor Fenghua, come down quickly. Otherwise, the Dragon God might think that you are sacrificing yourself and eat you directly." Yun Chuzhou smiled. "I am offering myself as a sacrifice. I heard that the Dragon God used a lot of young women in the past. I don't think he would reject me, right?" Jishan could not figure out what Yun Chuzhou was up to, but he did not want anything to happen to the beauty in his hands. He said anxiously, "Your Majesty Fenghua, this is not a joke. Come down quickly, or the Dragon God will really eat you." Yun Chuzhou said sarcastically, "Jishan, as the national master, shouldn't you be very happy to see someone sacrifice himself? Why are you still stopping me? Aren't you letting the Dragon God down a little?" Jishan's face stiffened. What was she trying to do? Just as Ji-shun was puzzled, there was a flash of light on the altar, and Yoon Chujio disappeared from the spot. Ji-shun gritted his teeth in frustration. What bad luck. Forget it. It was all that bitch's fault. Although she was good-looking, she was not very smart. Let the dragon god use her. When Yoon Chujio regained her sight, she found herself in a spacious stone hall. This stone hall was exactly the same as the stone hall of the five-colored phoenix. In the middle of the stone hall was a stone platform. There was a huge skeleton on it, and there were many huge golden scales scattered around it. When Hei Shinjo saw those scales, her eyes immediately curved into a crescent moon. Oh my, this thing looked high-end and high-class. It was the best thing to use to show off. Yoon Chujio looked around again. There was a pile of women's clothes in the corner. Most of them were close-fitting clothes. A strange thought emerged in her mind. Could those women have been raped by that Ji-shun? But by this evil dragon? Damn. Indeed, the nature of a dragon is lewd. But how did a remnant soul do it? Just as Yoon Chujio was thinking about it, a golden dragon phantom appeared on the huge dragon bone and said lewdly, "The goods delivered today are really not bad. It's actually a heavenly thunder spirit root? TSK little girl, you're lucky. You better obediently let this divine dragon possess you. I won't kill you. I'll seal your spiritual sense. After I find a suitable host, I'll let you out. When that time comes, I'll let you be this divine dragon's concubine. What do you think?" Hearing its words, Yoon Chujio confirmed the guess in her heart. She said fawningly, "Lord Divine Dragon, I think your suggestion is very good. But before that, can you answer a few of my questions?" The golden dragon was obviously very satisfied with Yoon Chujio's tactfulness. It said graciously, "What questions?" Yoon Chujio stretched out her hand and pointed at the clothes that looked like a small mountain. "Whose clothes are those? The national master has taken in many young women. Could it be that he didn't enjoy them but gave them to you?" The golden dragon said indifferently, "Those women were shared by me and him. He enjoyed the bodies of those women, while I enjoyed the souls of those women. Those clothes were kept by me as a souvenir. But don't worry. You are different from them. You will be my concubine in the future. I won't kill you." Yoon Chujio nodded. She looked a little flattered, but then she showed an angry expression. The golden dragon didn't understand and asked curiously, "Little beauty, what happened to you? Who made you angry?" "Master Dragon God, don't mention it. That Ji-shun is very detestable. I wanted to sacrifice myself but he kept stopping me. If I hadn't forcefully rushed to the altar, I'm afraid he wouldn't let us meet. I have a guess now. I'm afraid that some good-looking girls have been hidden by him and haven't been offered to you," Yoon Chujio said indignantly. Upon hearing this, the golden dragon said angrily, "I knew that Ant was not honest, but now that I'm trapped here, I can only use his hand to collect the woman's soul. I can only turn a blind eye. Lord Dragon God, can Ji-shun come in here? I'm a little scared," Yoon Chujio said with a trembling voice. The golden dragon snorted. "Who does he think he is? Of course he doesn't have the right to come in here. And he doesn't even know about the existence of this place." Yoon Chujio asked with confusion, "Lord Dragon God, if he doesn't know about this place, how can you order him?" The golden dragon opened his mouth and was about to say something when he suddenly said angrily, "Why do you ask so many questions? Why don't you come over and let me possess you?" Yoon Chujio sighed. "Lord Dragon God, you misunderstood me. I was thinking for you. That Ji-shun deceived you, Lord Dragon God, and he really deserved to die. Moreover, after you possess me, you will definitely have to go out. That Ji-shun is guarding outside. How are you going to go out? So you have to think of a way to kill him first. Only then can you successfully escape after you leave." The golden dragon thought for a moment and felt that what Yoon Chujio said made sense. After it possessed, its strength would be very weak for a period of time. Since Ji-shun had an evil intention towards this little girl, after it got out, it would definitely pester it. Thinking of this, the golden dragon said with some annoyance, "Now that I'm trapped here, there's no way to kill him unless he walks up to the altar. Yun Chujo blinked her eyes and said, Lord Dragon God, I have a good idea. As long as you follow my plan, you can definitely kill him. Moreover, after you possess him, you can successfully escape. The golden dragon said with some doubt, You really have a plan? Why are you so active? Don't tell me there's some conspiracy? Yun Chujo looked aggrieved. Lord Dragon God, didn't you promise to take me as your concubine in the future? As your concubine, I naturally have to help you. Hearing Yun Chujio's words, the golden dragon's suspicions were somewhat dispelled. Moreover, it felt that Yun Chujio did not have the courage to go against it. A majestic divine beast. Thus, it said in a benevolent manner, Speak, what do you have in mind? Yun Chujio said a few words. The golden dragon felt that this method was not bad, so it nodded. It originally did not want to take Yun Chujio out, but Yun Chujio threatened to self-destruct her Dantian. So the golden dragon could only agree. After all, the heavenly thunder spirit root was something that could only be found by chance. If this wretched girl was willing to sacrifice herself, it did not know when it would be able to leave this place. The golden dragon began to form seals, and with a flash of white light, the shadows of Yun Chujio and the golden dragon appeared on the altar. Ji Shen was currently talking to Emperor Nanxian and Prime Minister Sima. Emperor Nanxian and Prime Minister Sima had been waiting outside the divine hall. Ji Shen saw that Yun Chujio was dead for sure, so he asked someone to call them in. His Majesty Fenghua willingly sacrificed herself to the dragon god. It has already been eaten by the dragon god. You can go back now. Ji Shen said with a gloomy face. What? Prime Minister Sima almost fainted. In less than an hour, His Majesty had died? Besides, His Majesty cherished his life very much. How could he sacrifice himself to the dragon god? It was simply impossible. Prime Minister Sima couldn't care less about fear anymore. He said angrily, State Preceptor Ji Shen, how could our emperor sacrifice his body to the divine dragon for no reason? Hurry up and hand over our emperor, or else don't blame our East Phoenix Kingdom for being impolite. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.